my Chris Mad Dog Russo impression, as I tend to do on the live version of the show. Very different than the recorded podcast. Victor Anderson's heard them all. He is with me. And also joining us, he's in a hotel. We're all in the market in Orlando. D1 Softball's Justin McLeod. He is taking a tour of the state of Florida. He was with me earlier on Sunday at the UCF Media Day. He was treated like the king that he is. He was get the carpet and everything. I mean, we had a carpet opening for him. It was great. He's taking a tour of the state of Florida before obviously getting ready to cover the marquee tournament of the weekend in college softball at the NFCA Leadoff Classic in Clearwater later this week. We are going to be joined by our D1 Softball's very own Jenna Becerra. And at the bottom of the hour, we're going to talk with her on the show. We're going to hit them up. Here's what we're going to do, folks. We're going to take some of your questions and comments. Victor is going to handle all the social media stuff. He'll let us know. Fang Dai, good to see you. We're going to talk Power 4 conferences, some of the storylines in college softball 2025. Oklahoma going for a 5P. NiJaree Canady going at Texas Tech. Just a couple of the storylines we're going to hit. Hey, the Pac-12 is no longer with us. Where are all of them? Who's going to do well from that Pac-12 alumni? Who's not going to do so well? Who might struggle? We're going to discuss all of those topics and much, much more coming up here. Of course, subscribe. Make sure you like us here on the YouTube channel and subscribe to the YouTube. That'll be very nice for us. Of course, we got a regular podcast. If wherever you listen to your favorite podcast, subscribe there. Give us a nice 5-star review preferred. We just had Big 12 Media Week. Just concur. You can listen to all that. But we also had SEC Mini Week a couple of weeks ago. We had Patty Gasso on that during that time frame. We had Mike White. We had Reese Atwood. We've had Tegan Kavan. We've had Courtney Deifel. Tim Walton.
Eric, instead of you ranting about who we had on the show, why don't we just show the people who we had on Big 12 Media Week?
There it is. There's Big 12 Media Week.
Big and strong. NiJaree Canady and Jerry Glasgow. We hit up every Big 12 school with their head coach and a star player, or in some cases, players. 2 episodes a day, all last week. Catch up on every episode, talking all things Big 12 on your favorite streaming platform, Good Pods, Stitcher, of course, the Varsity Network. And as Eric alluded to, rate us and review us 5 stars. If you rate us 4 stars, we are inclined to believe that you're a hater. And oh, by the way, we have a Big 12 conference outlook as well as previews of all 31 conferences.
All 31? You could do
all
that?
All 31 on D1Softball.com.
Not 10, not 5, not 6, not 7.
31. 31. That's one more than entries in the Royal Rumble. But if you go to D1Softball.com right now, well, not right now while we're doing the show, but after the show, use promo code SEASON25. You get 25% off your annual subscription to D1 Softball. What does that mean? You get access to all of the conference outlooks. You get access to the transfer tracker. You get access to the coaching carousel. You get access to our player rankings. You get access to Eric Lopez's bracketology, and also our preseason prognostications that will be coming out early this week. And let me just say, ladies and gentlemen, we got some spicy ones that'll be coming on the horizon. Again, go to D1Softball.com, use code SEASON25, get 25% off your annual subscription. So how about that? We are ready to rock and roll here, ladies and gentlemen, for this season.
Clearly the budget has increased on the show. Holy man, that's a great
Let's put it this way, Eric. It's a far cry from when we were doing the season preview 1 year ago around this time.
I'd say so. All right, let's start here, folks. Let me ask you both this question. What is the biggest college softball story this year you're looking forward to the most? Is it Oklahoma going for a 5P? Is it Oklahoma and Texas joining the SEC? Is it UCLA, Washington and Oregon to the Big Ten? Is it NiJaree Canady going to Texas Tech? What is your number one storyline of 2025 that you're looking forward to the most? Who wants to lead it off? Vic, go ahead, Victor.
I'll go ahead and lead things off, gentlemen. So for me, the biggest storyline in 2025 is going to be the super conferences. And we're going to get into more detail with those. The SEC adding Oklahoma and Texas. The ACC adding Stanford and Cal. the Big 12, who we just highlighted, adding Arizona, Arizona State, Utah, and of course the Big 10 adding UCLA, Oregon, and Washington. How does the committee evaluate those conferences, knowing that it's going to be an unbalanced schedule, and how do they properly evaluate those teams when they get ready to pick the field of 64? That's going to be something that is fascinating. I've already said on previous episodes before tonight, I don't think the SEC is getting all 15 in. I feel confident about that. The committee has shown they are now willing to do that. They've done it in the past, but I'll have to see it to believe it. So let's go to Mr. Justin McLeod. What do you think, sir, is your biggest storyline entering this season?
For me, and I hate to use the example that's probably the easy, cheap example. For me, it's can softball find our own Caitlin Clark? And by that, I mean, we have stars in the sport. We've got, I see the chat's already talking about NiJaree Canady. Think of her, you think of Jordy Ball. Think of a Carlin Pickens, a Jocelyn Erickson, a Reese Atwood. Like we have the obvious stars, the first names that people right now are going to go to. The thing for me is, can softball find its Caitlin Clark in the sense of a general household superstar name? Can somebody in the sport of softball transcend the sport and just become the face of softball? We need that as a sport. We need that. We need that. What's the word I'm looking for? We need that to punctuate our sport, to continue growing, to not plateau. We have stars. We don't have bona fide superstars to that degree. That to me is the biggest storyline I'm curious about this year. It has to happen for us to continue to grow as a sport. We have to have that. And maybe we have three. Maybe it's not a Caitlin Clark, because I don't think it's just – I understand what Caitlin Clark did in basketball, but I think of a Caitlin Clark and an Angel Reese and what those two players did for basketball at the same time. If you think about where we are as a sport, that's necessary now. Not that we are plateauing, but we certainly are not going upward at the rate we once were, even 3-4 years ago, 5 years ago, whatever. That to me is something that's incredibly key, that probably is not the biggest headliner, but I think it's very important for us as a sport. So I'm really curious. And I think we have the cast of characters to potentially pull it off, to have that superstar or those couple of superstars or whatever. It's just, are we going to get there? That to me is the biggest thing.
Mr. Lopez?
Well, I think you both make good points. I think NiJaree Canady is the story. And I talked to her earlier, obviously, on the Big 12 Media Week Monday, and talking to the folks at Texas Tech even, and setting all that up. Think about this. Texas Tech, y'all, sold out season tickets this year. They're adding seats in the bleachers. That's how excited they are about softball in Lubbock. That is not something that has been said before. So she's made an impact there. Look at her game against Nebraska at Clearwater opening weekend. It has been picked up. It'll be on MLB Network. I would suspect that the four-letter network, if they know what, they will pick up some Texas Tech games that they would have never thought about. I think all eyes are going to be to see what she does at Texas Tech and the impact there that she does for them. Can she lead Texas Tech to a place they've never been before, which is, I'm not even talking about a World Series. I'm talking about past a regional. They've never won a regional. They've only been to the tournament 6 times. Can they host for the first time? They've done that in baseball. So to me, I think she's the slight edge is the number one story. But I do think Victor makes a point. I think realignment is interesting. How does Oklahoma and Texas fit in the SEC? UCLA, Oregon, and Washington in the Big Ten. I think you've got Arizona, Utah, Arizona State in the Big 12, Oregon State all the way in the West Coast Conference. How do the I'm just going to call them the Pac-12 alums, formerly known Pac-12 alum schools. How do they fare in these new conferences? Stanford and Cal in the ACC. How does Stanford do without NiJaree Canady? I think there are more storylines this season than ever before because of all of that. Not to mention Oklahoma just graduated their senior class. I think there's even questions about some of the new faces up in Norman for Patty Gasso and the Sooners. So I think in a lot of ways there is enough storyline, but I think Justin's right. I think softball needs that headliner superstar player that people will circle and watch. Now, Caitlin Clark might not be fair comparison because she's a 1-1. Like nobody will ever say this, but the women's basketball numbers are down this year. What a shocker. Why? Because Caitlin Clark's no longer at Iowa. It's funny how that happens sometimes. So we'll see how their NCAA tournament numbers are. But I do think they need to get back to having a star or two, the Kat Ostermans of the world, the people that people wanted to watch. And I think Jocelyn Aloes, exactly. Can we get that star that the casual person is interested in watching and getting on, Sports Center, Scott Van Pelt interview, for example? I think that will be something to see what happens. I think this is an interesting year, too, because there was so much graduation with the regular senior class and the COVID senior class that it's a young sport this year. I think a lot of teams I've talked to, Justin, you and I have combined talked to about over 150 school coaches through various conferences. And I was not to put words in your mouth, but I feel like you and I, when every time we've traded notes as far as coaches that we've talked to, one of the consistent patterns has been, man, we're young this year. Mm-hmm. You're like, we're young. Like talking to Beth Tarina. Yeah, we're pretty young. Lost a great senior class. Patty Gasso, very young team. UCF, Justin, you were at Media Day today. Very young team. There's a pattern across the board, for the most part, of a lot of youth in this sport, which could set up. We're going to meet new stars this year.
I'm going to throw out a stat that I found yesterday, too, by the way, of the top 50 active home run leaders last season. So the top 50 career home run leaders last season, top 50, we returned 6. Not at the same school, didn't transfer.
What?
6.
Say that again.
6 of the top 50 active career home run leaders that last season, we returned 6 this year.
Wow. Well, you gave me the stat. I believe 23 out of the 57 NFC All-Americans only return, which is the fewest it's in many years as well. So it's a young sport this year, and I think that might present some more interesting results early in the season as teams try to figure out who they are on that. People on the message board bringing up Wayne Petrie, Jordy Ball coming back. That is a storyline. Oh, by the way, Nebraska. Hey, they're going to be in Clearwater, Justin. They're going to hang out with you. How about that?
I mean, I'll be there.
So is NiJaree and company. There's that. So let's start with the SEC. Let's start with the SEC here. Texas and Oklahoma in the SEC. Victor already kind of prelude to it about how many teams the SEC can get. We'll get to that in a moment. But what are you guys thinking about Texas and Oklahoma? The coaches poll had Texas as the favorite, Oklahoma picked third, Florida second on many of the polls, including D1 softball. That's your top 3 as far as in the country. Florida was our preseason number 1, Texas 2, Oklahoma 3. But what is the impact of Oklahoma and Texas now in the SEC versus the Big 12, Justin?
Well, it's huge on 2 different levels. It's obviously huge for the SEC because – and I know what Victor said at the top, but let's go with the theory that maybe every SEC team makes the tournament. You're going to have exactly one regional that doesn't have an SEC team in it. That's going to make a difference because then how many super regionals are you staffing with all SEC? We've talked about that in the past, the SEC versus SEC super regional. Well, now you just added 2 teams to that are, let's just be honest, they're going to make a super regional. So it's big for the SEC because the SEC already was kind of well dominating outside of those 3 Big 12 teams, Oklahoma, Texas, Oklahoma State. Well, now, the old adage, I get it, is if you can't beat them, join them. But Oklahoma and Texas were beating them, and they joined them anyway, just for the heck of it. It's huge for the SEC because they're about to keep that. They're about to go from a fingerprint all over the sport to an entire handprint. Like they're just going to have their thumb on the entire sport. It's a big deal. I don't know that I can actually fully say how big of a deal it is because I think when we get 3 weeks into the season, I think we're going to see it. When we have these big time matchups and it's SEC everywhere and all this kind of stuff, and we're just going to sit there and go, oh, and Oklahoma and Texas are in the SEC this year. Like when we're looking at SEC teams winning big games here and big games there, and then we're like, oh yeah, this is the conference that Oklahoma and Texas joined. That's when I think it's, at least for me, that's when I'm like, it's a big deal. I mean, it's big for the Big 12 too. Don't get me wrong, but I actually think the Big 12, as good as they could do, survived. Like losing Oklahoma and Texas, you did as good as you could do softball wise. But I think it's huge for the SEC. I mean, I think what we're trending towards now is a World Series at some point. Not that has all 8 teams in the SEC, but it's got 6. Like maybe not this year, but at some point, I think that's where we're going, and that's big.
We have already seen that a little bit in college baseball, and our good friends at D1 Baseball, by the way. Make sure you give them a shout out there. The folks getting ready for their own baseball season, by the way.
Yes.
In a couple of weeks. Omaha is becoming the SEC Invitational. It's like Hoover Part 2 with their domination in the sport there. I think it was it's becoming closer and closer in all SEC World Series. The ACC is still very competitive in college baseball, but you make a good point. We're seeing this currently in college men's basketball, where the SEC is dominating in basketball historically, where they're talking 12 to 13 teams to make the tournament, which is funny. Everybody's like freaking out, like, my God, they could get 13 out of 16. And we're like, yeah, that would be that might be considered a disappointment in softball. I don't know, but I don't think we'll have the debate about what's the best conference in college softball anymore. But it is going to be interesting, and Victor brings it up, and he believes they will not get all 15 teams. Justin, where do you stand on that? Will that impact enough, having OU Texas on the schedule, perhaps some of those bubble teams that an Ole Miss last year or an Auburn where they would normally make the tournament, but do they miss out? That will be something I'm curious to see in the SEC. Is there teams at the bottom get hurt by the additions of Oklahoma, Texas, or is it status quo and it makes them stronger to the point go historic to, and I think it will be a debate. Do they get all 15 in, and is it good for the sport or not?
Well, the kicker is the recipe to do that is about as cookie cutter as you can get. You play enough games in the first 4 weeks of the season to pad your win total to get what you need, and then you play a conference schedule. You're gonna snatch a conference game from somebody. Arkansas, pre-Deifel at their lowest, when they were bottom of the SEC with dirt on top of them, still won at least one game in conference play. It's going to happen. But when you're playing an SEC schedule, you're going to come out with a top 40 strength of schedule. It's going to happen. Like, you're going to play Oklahoma and Texas and Florida and Tennessee and A&M. Like, you can't avoid all of them in the same year. You're going to play some of them. You're always going to have a great strength of schedule. So, like, that's the recipe. I think it was South Carolina 2 years ago when they had missed the tournament 2 years in a row, to pretty much to make sure they made it the next year. You just pad the schedule. You just put enough games in there, midweeks, non-cons early in the season, the first few weeks of the season, and you start 17-2, and maybe at some point you lose 15 games, but that's still 17-17. All of a sudden, you're in the postseason. You're eligible for the postseason, and with the strength of schedule in the top 40s, you're most of the time going to get in. Do I think they should all be in? No, but the recipe is there, and we've seen bad SEC teams get in before because strength of schedule.
Softball's been the most forgiving of all the sports by far. They will let you in if it's close, give and take, and I think that will be remain to see. Keep in mind, too, the SEC did not increase the number of conference series. So it's not like, we got to play more games. Some teams will miss on playing Oklahoma. Some teams will miss playing Texas. Some teams will miss playing some of the top teams in general. So, and I know Fagnai's writing notes because he likes to keep track of stuff, which he's very good at.
Please track everything.
Shout out to Wimblero, by the way, who's out. I used to in Japan. Hey, get ready. Wimblero, you're going to be excited. Me and Justin, after the live show, are going to record our mid-major special where we preview the other 27 conferences. That'll come out later this week. I know you've been looking forward to that one.
My behind will still be up recording tomorrow's episode that we'll talk about later on.
By the time we're done recording that, you'll be sleeping. What are you talking
about? Exactly.
That's going to be great. All right, so
going back to your point, Justin. the fact that the committee has shown in the past few years that they're not beholden to put all 13 teams, now 15 teams in the SEC tournament into the field of 64 shows you that they are willing to really analyze, say, okay, we get that you played a tough schedule. Who exactly have you beaten? So, yeah, you could say you're playing a top 40 schedule, but if you are, since they're still playing 24 conference games, let's say if you're 6-18 in the SEC and you're 1 and done in the SEC tournament, is the committee really going to value that? And again, going back to my earlier point about these super saturated conferences, who you play in the conference will have a distinct value. And if you make the field of 64, perfect
in theory,
example.
we don't know that for a fact. We're going to find out.
I agree. But a perfect example, you look at Virginia last year. They avoided some of the big teams in the ACC, and when they had a chance to play Duke, they beat Duke 2 out of 3, and that was one of the big reasons why Coach Harden and company made it into the field of 64. What SEC team, what Big Ten team could benefit from a soft conference schedule, rack up win series against the top half of the conference here and there, and they can get themselves like Virginia did last year?
Well, look at an Ole Miss last year. I'm going to tell you. I'm just going to say it. If there's Ole Miss fans in the chats, at just spam on Twitter, I might reply. That was a bad Ole Miss team last year. I covered several of their games. I watched their games in person. That was a bad Ole Miss team last year. But the one thing, and it goes back to the SEC thing, the one thing Ole Miss had going for them was it was a bad bubble, and they played an SEC schedule. At the end of the day, that's always going to win out. Now, granted, they had a couple of wins at the end against, was it Arkansas right there at the end? That helped vault them over that line.
Won a series against Auburn as well. Yeah.
I'm going to tell you, I watched them play a doubleheader against Louisiana Tech. It was a good Louisiana Tech team, don't get me wrong. But that Ole Miss team struggled against Louisiana Tech, beat them in, I think, the 13th inning. And if a right fielder doesn't dive, and it was doubleheader, they swept it. If a right fielder doesn't dive and she just comes in standing up, they split the doubleheader. I'm telling you, it was a bad Ole Miss team. But when it's a bad bubble, the SEC schedule, the strength of schedule, no matter the number of wins, is always gonna be something that wins out in the committee room, because you can't meet that. Nobody else outside the SEC can meet that. Like the Big 12 can't meet it now with that strength. Nobody in the Big 10 of the ACC can, and certainly nobody outside one of the Power Fours can meet that. Your SEC strength of schedule, even if you don't play, give those 5 that I listed earlier. If you don't play Oklahoma, Texas, Florida, Tennessee, or A&M, you're still going to play Arkansas, LSU, Alabama, et cetera, et cetera. You're always going to play good, strong teams. And that, at the end of the day, is always going to win out.
All right, so let me ask you both this. If I put the over-under, 13.5 teams making the tournament for the SEC, go over or under 13.5 teams for the SEC to reach the tournament. Last year, they made 13 got in. There's 15 teams playing softball this year. So that's the simple math. Do you think over or under? Would you take 13.5 over or under SEC teams in the tournament?
Over.
Justin goes over. Vic?
Under.
You'll find out when my bracketology comes out what I think will be projected. Make sure you're a subscriber to D1 Softball. Yes, that's right. We're going to tease you. We're going to make you tune. We're going to make you subscribe, people. We're not going to give it some easy there. Well, it's under my contract anyway. Let's go quick here. The consensus is that Texas, Florida, Oklahoma are the 3 prohibited favorites to win the SEC. Give me a sleeper team to the SEC that maybe come May, you're like, whoa, this team has a chance to win the conference champion regular season title, or comes in and wins the tournament title that is not one of those 3 teams I mentioned. Who would you pick?
Can I pick 2?
Who would you pick? 2? Yeah, fine.
Can I pick 2?
Yes, per tradition. You're going to break the rules of my question.
I was going to say,
he is Mike Wilbon. He is not beholden to any of our rules and regulations.
That is correct. Go ahead, Justin.
I have never not picked. I've never only picked one team. Tennessee and Texas A&M.
The two-time defending regular season champion Tennessee Volunteers, and A&M, of course.
You still got Carlin Pickens. Offense graduated some pieces. To me, still looks pretty good. We know what Tennessee can do. They finally made it back to the World Series 2 years ago. I mean, granted, last year not the ending they wanted, but they were good. They were a good team, and you still got Pickens. A&M, they built up pretty fast under Tricia Ford, and I finally liked the pitching depth around Emily Kennedy. Like, she showed last year what she was made of. They've got her for this year, senior, but I like the depth around her. The Sparks kid who came from Ole Miss, I thought was completely underutilized at Ole Miss. I think she's got a shot at doing something. And Tricia Ford knows how to get some good pitching and use some good pitching. So Tennessee and A&M are my two, because I'm breaking the rules, picks in that category.
Vic?
I think Georgia. I think Wayne brings up a very valid point. You look at Georgia's SEC schedule, it's very light, but can they figure – and it's always been a thing with Georgia. Can they figure out the pitching staff? Let's remember, gentlemen, Georgia needed a walk-off single in the bottom of the seventh inning against Liberty to make it to Super Regionals. So it's not a sure thing with Georgia. I know they have a great offense, but the pitching has always been the question mark for the Bulldogs the last few years, especially since Tony Baldwin has taken over the program for Coach Lou Harris-Champer.
Look at what Georgia lost, too. Like, he's right. They do have about as easy as a regular season schedule is going to get in the conference. But with what they lost, I'm not convinced that they're going to actually – I'm not convinced it's going to actually feel easy for them. I mean, what was it? 4 or 5 offensive starters, couple of pitchers. Like, they lost a ton. They lost their core.
Yeah.
They can figure it out. Those freshmen deliver right away. Might pay off. But I don't know. It could also – the easiest conference schedule you're going to get – which is not easy, might really look not easy if they can't get some pieces in real quick.
Well, Eric, you're gonna find out early. Georgia comes to Orlando for the Black and Gold Classic opening weekend, so you will
tune in. ESPN Plus, ESPN Plus, baby. It is the most. It'll be the best softball game on Thursday night that'll actually be televised on an ESPN platform. How about that?
I've
got Nebraska and Tennessee. And
that is not on an ESPN platform.
I was going to say.
But I can say Nebraska and Tennessee will have the best matchup between radio broadcasters, between Nate Rohr and Brian Rice, presuming he's in Florida.
He ain't going to be there. He's not going to be. He's got women's hoop stuff.
So who's got? Okay, so that's
their problem. Justin stole my picks with Tennessee and A&M, so I will pick a different team. Arkansas. I like the Razorbacks. I like what Deifel's got. Great freshman class. This was the number 1 recruiting class in the country that she has coming in to mix in with some of the veterans. I like this Razorbacks team. And by the way, she knows how to win an SEC title. She's done that a couple of times. Yeah. I will go there. Oklahoma.
Jay, wait, you just go bypass me and not ask me for my dark horse?
Really? You said Georgia. You said Georgia.
No. Well, yes, Georgia is my dark horse, but I will also state this. Look out for LSU. Bev Torino knows a thing or two about winning. Just saying.
Nick Torino, appreciate that prediction there.
Yes.
Let me go through the top teams here. Florida's become the trendy pick for a lot of people. Number 1 rankings, national title games. They've added the pieces there. Texas returns just about everybody on the team. Oklahoma has a lot of new faces. So let me go. I want to do 2 prop bets on Oklahoma. Who will lead the Oklahoma pitching staff in wins, and who's going to be the leading hitter on Oklahoma's offense? Give me your predictions, both of you.
You can go first, Mr. Anderson.
I will go Ella Parker to lead their offense. How she played in Oklahoma City last year was just phenomenal, and I think that's going to be a sign of things to come for that Sooner team, which is going to be young, and that experience that they gained, that battle with Florida to get to the Champ Series before they were able to take home that unprecedented 4th national championship. That's the thing that I'm looking forward to the most. And here's another one I wanted to pick, Abby Dayton. That's another one. Remember, transferred in from Utah, World Series experience with the Utes a couple of years ago. don't underestimate the value that she will bring to that outfield, especially with what they lost from 1 year ago. In terms of the pitching staff, I don't know if it because you can go on it because with Jen Rocha, she's gonna figure out the proper matchup for the pitching staff. I'm gonna go with Isabella Smith. I know that kind of seems like low-hanging fruit, but you look at what she did before she got to Oklahoma, I feel that she's going to thrive in this level. And I feel that under Coach Rocha's tutelage, and I said this on last year's season preview, and I'm going to say it again, Jen Rocha will have Oklahoma in a great position with the pitching staff, and they will figure it out at the end of the year. Think about this. She's the only pitcher currently in America to be a 2-time pitcher of the year in 2 different conferences. Was the Big South Pitcher of the Year 2023, was the Colonial Pitcher of the Year 2024. Just saying.
It's the conference formerly known as the Colonial, as we refer to
Oh, my bad. My bad.
You don't need to call it what it actually is because they banned JMU, so I refuse to call it that name.
Still on that.
Justin,
Still
go
on
ahead.
that, huh?
So I'm gonna Ella Parker offensively. That's the gimme for me. I agree. Abby Dayton's gonna be really good. She is really good. She's gonna be really good. But Ella Parker for me, hitting wise. Pitching's where it gets interesting for me because I have one concern with Bella Smith, and it's the same concern I have with Sam Landry. As good as they both are, as good as they both have been, neither one has ever pitched in this many huge environments, huge games, much less pitched a series. Bella Smith threw well when she played Duke on a midweek, Chapel Hill on a midweek, South Carolina on a midweek. Like, she threw well. Those were one-off games. She's never had cause, never had reason to throw twice or 3 times in a weekend against the same Power 5 opponent. Landry at UL, think about it. Glasgow protected her. That's the best way I know to put it. He protected her. He never threw her in the major moments in the big games. I'm not saying she's not capable of doing it. I'm not saying Smith isn't either. We haven't seen it. So for me, I'm going to go Kirsten Deal because she's the only one that I actually have seen show up in those moments. I don't think anybody at OU is Kelly Maxwell level. They're going to be a staff. And maybe that's what they need because nobody's a Maxwell. But if you're gonna say that, if you're gonna pin me down to that in the pitching, I'm gonna go Kirsten Deal because she's the one who has the experience of, even if it's just Texas and Oklahoma State, she's got that experience. Even if it's just from 2 weekends a year the last couple of years, she's still done that. Landry and Smith, neither one have done that. So I'm gonna go Kirsten Deal.
I agree about Deal. Lowry, I think, could be right there. Patty Gasso did tell me expect more of a committee approach. There is, quote, no Kalani Ricketts on this staff. That's what she said on the podcast. Her words there. I tend to agree that, but I think they have enough quality arms. I'm going Ella Parker. I'm actually big on Ella Parker for have a monster year. I think she could become the new face of Oklahoma softball by the end of this year. So, all right, quick, because we got guests. Give me player of the year, pitcher of the year, your pick to win the SEC.
Ooh.
Player of the year, Ella Parker. Pitcher of the year, Carlin Pickens, Florida to win the SEC.
Ooh. Emily Kennedy, pitcher of the year. I will go with, here's a dark horse, Wyckoff from Arkansas, player of the year. And I got Florida winning both the regular season and tournament title.
Whoa. I'm going to go Pickens with Sydney Berzon right in the mix for LSU there. Ella Parker, I'm with you guys on Ella Parker winning SEC Player of the Year. I've got Texas winning the SEC title. I want to be specific on this. SEC title. Look at the schedules. Florida's schedule is brutal. It is brutal. I think Texas will actually win the regular season title tournament. Who knows? But I think Texas wins it. I think they have a manageable schedule in the SEC. They got the core back. The core back, as Mike White told me there, it's a much veteran team. They won the Big 12 regular season title last year. I like Texas to win the SEC regular season title. I think Florida's schedule's a little rough. I like Florida a lot overall. Might even like them more in the postseason when we get to the tournament. But as far as the SEC slate, man, that is unbelievable scheduling with the SEC there.
Even with them going to Florida and Oklahoma to bookend the schedule.
It is unbelievable. They got Alabama, Texas, Florida, Arkansas at home. That is an amazing slate that you got to go through with Florida. Like I said, I'm not saying I don't like Florida. In fact, I think Florida will be a top 2, top 3 national seed. But that doesn't mean you have to win the SEC regular season title, as we've learned in the past.
Yes. As Fang Nine said, so it is said, so it is written.
All right, we have a guest, don't we now, Mr. Anderson?
Yes. I don't know if we consider her a guest. We consider her a part of the family now.
Well, clearly, the smart one of the group. Literally, I mean, she went to Stanford. She has a degree. I think it's back that up.
Yes, she is. Yes, she is.
That is Jenna Becerra joining us right here on the show. Standout player at Stanford, D1 softball's very own, host of multiple podcast shows. Hello, Jenna.
Hi. Now it feels like the season is actually starting because I'm joining the preseason in the circle session. So now it feels official. It didn't until right now.
Yes.
Wow. Big time deal. All right, Jenna, I want to ask you what I asked the guys earlier. What is the number one storyline you're looking forward to the most in college softball this year?
Oh, let's just start with the casual questions, I guess. I mean, for both personal and professional reasons, I would say I'm very curious just to see how Texas Tech does with the obvious big time transfer with NiJaree Canady making her way there, but then so many of the Louisiana folks going with Jerry Glasgow over to Lubbock as well. I'm just curious to see how they bring it all together, because I think that's the thing. It's one thing to have talent. It's another thing to bring it together. So I'm very curious to see how they do that in a Big 12 that no longer has Texas and Oklahoma. So it's really them and Oklahoma State at the top, most likely, based on what we see on paper, at least beforehand.
What are you looking forward to seeing her as far as adjusting? What's the biggest adjustment you're curious to see her? She told me on the show, as did Jerry Glasgow on our Big 12 Media Week when we did Texas Tech, she's going to be more of a two-way player this year than she has been at Stanford. She's been working on her hitting as she's looking forward to that. Is that what you're looking forward to seeing, how she handles that? What is it that you're intrigued to see about her at Tech?
Yeah, I mean, that always adds another dimension, 100%. She did, however, hit at Stanford some as well. So did Elena Vaughter. They did get some at-bats during their time on the farm. But I think for me, it's a new environment. There's a lot of new for her. But also, she had a very close working relationship with pitching coach Tori Nyberg, who I think was arguably, before she left college coaching altogether, top 2 pitching coaches in the country, potentially, Jen Rocha being the other one at Oklahoma. And so I think that there was a lot of quality development that happened there in her first 2 years. So I'm curious to see in a new environment how she adapts to that. Because it is different, right? It's not only the new head coach, of course, you're in a new school, but just that bullpen environment specifically. And then also, she's 2 years in now, so people have film. That's the case after your freshman year as well. But now that she's been to 2 Women's College World Series, people have film on her. And, adjustments are the name of the game, especially for the best offenses in the country. So I'm just, again, it's about how does that play out?
All right, let me ask you, obviously with the Pac-12, we know what happened there. They do not exist for now. They could be back in a different form down a few years. We'll worry about that down the road. I want to ask you, I'm going to call these the Pac-12 alums. All right. With obviously you've got Cal and Stanford, very well in the ACC. You've got Arizona, Utah, Arizona State in the Big 12, UCLA, Oregon, Washington, Big 10, Oregon State, West Coast Conference. Do you agree with this statement first? Do you believe UCLA of that group will have the most success in 2025? Do you agree? Yes or no?
If we're defining success in terms of like conference performance, most likely, yes. Just in terms of if you think about it, in terms of power conferences in recent years, the Big Ten has sent the least amount of teams into the NCAA tournament. But you're getting the not only historical best program across the nation in college softball in terms of number of national championships, et cetera, but even recently having gone to the World Series and the turnaround that they had last year with Taylor Tinsley and KT was pretty remarkable, winning the Pac-12 championship and then moving on to OKC. So I just think they have that momentum, especially with the addition of Addison Fisher, the freshman, one of the top, if not the top recruit from that class coming in. They're just really, really set up for success. And the battle-tested aspect of the Pac-12 that existed before, all of these teams are going to take that experience into each of the conferences that they go to. So I think every single conference that they've entered, the Big Ten, the ACC, the Big 12, they're all strengthened by adding Pac-12 previously teams.
You hesitated, though, a little bit. You said about as far as conference, are you still – you don't think they might be the most successful as far as the postseason, the NCAA tournament? Do you have somebody you like more, or is it just kind of a parallel there with somebody else?
No, I think that they're probably in the best position, period, from a holistic standpoint. I just think that what are the tangible ways we're measuring success, right? And initially it's looking at the conferences, especially since this is the first time that everyone is entering those conferences. But yes, certainly they were very high on my preseason poll. In the top 25, UCLA definitely the highest out of all of the Pac-12 alum schools.
Of all the group that I mentioned, which one are you most concerned about as far as how they will fare in that respective conference, in that situation, for a variety of reasons? It could be because you're worried about the distance of travel. It could be, for example, in Oregon State's case, dropping from a power conference to a mid-major conference. It could be youth, as we'll get to. Well, I'll ask you about Stanford momentarily and some of obviously the impact on the pitching side. But which school in the Pac, the alums, are you most concerned or curious about in their new homes?
I think there's a two-pronged answer to this from me, at least. The Pacific Northwest teams are all very much in a rebuilding situation in terms of transfers as well as just moves into new conferences. If we're looking at, I think Oregon State is set up to do well in their conference now this year. But if you look at Oregon and Washington, one thing I'm curious about is weather-wise, they can't travel or they can't host a lot in the preseason because of the rain and different elements that they're used to dealing with. Plus, they're going to be traveling more in conference play. So in terms of the realignment situation, the geography, they might actually have the toughest hand that was dealt to them with this entire thing. So I'm curious to see how they deal with that. But then outside of that also, Arizona State is a very interesting team to me to watch because I don't think we necessarily saw them at full throttle in the past couple of years. They had so many injuries last year that they were just fighting through on a day-to-day. They were more so surviving than thriving. So I think now having time to have hopefully healed up, come together a little bit. Megan Bartlett is further into her tenure also at ASU. So getting that time under her belt to actually build the culture and build the cohesion that she's looking for. I think I'm curious to see how that ends up, especially when you know that they're going to face familiar faces like Arizona and Utah, but then of course the newbies as well across the board.
I'm with you on Washington. There's a lot of questions about Washington. Maybe the most questions about any Husky team in a long, long time. A lot of departures enter the portal. Changes in the coaching staff. Victoria Haywood becoming the head coach at Nevada. Jen Salling coming in. They got a new pitching coach. Heather Tart just stepped down as U.S. national head coach. Oh, by the way, Victor, there's a lot of questions in Seattle this year. And now they're going to be in the Big Ten. I'm not, of the three, I think they could struggle in the Big Ten, at least this year, until they get some of that recruiting back up in a year or so. Because, yes, UCLA, I think, is the heavy favorites. I think Oregon's young, but they're pretty talented. But there's some Big Ten teams like Michigan, et cetera, that could give Washington a lot of fits. I think Washington, to me, is the one that's got some issues there. Victor, you got a question for Jenna?
Well, Jenna, my biggest thing is that we just had Big 12 Media Week. We kind of highlighted Arizona State. You got Arizona State with that youth still trying to find their way. Arizona, we saw what they did, winning another regional last year in Fayetteville. And then you got Utah, who's kind of still figuring things out, making it to the Pac-12 championship game, a couple years removed from making it to the World Series. How do you see those Pac-12 alums adjusting in a larger Big 12 where, it's Oklahoma State and Texas Tech, and then Oklahoma State, Texas Tech, Baylor, and then a lot of possible question marks?
Yeah, it's interesting because, like I said, I think all of the Pac-12 alum programs know what the grind is, and essentially having sort of postseason matchups on a regular basis during the regular season. That's something that everyone has lived by in their experience in the Pac-12 previously. I think when you're moving into a new environment, it's always an adjustment. However, with the Big 12, when it comes to travel and logistics and figuring out a lot of that stuff, those three schools, the Arizona schools, as well as Utah, actually got it kind of the best out of all the Pac-12 schools that have to now travel to different conferences, whether it's the Big 10, the ACC. That's actually a pretty manageable travel schedule. So from that perspective, maybe a smoother transition with those types of things. But I think people have been sleeping a little bit on Arizona as well. The past several years, they've been on the rise. Obviously, Caitlin Lowe's first year, them having gone to the Women's College World Series, and then it was pretty tough after that. But I think they've slowly but surely started to build up again. And so with that being said, Utah is in a very interesting position as well, because we're used to seeing the Abby Daytons, who's now at Oklahoma, right? And the super fast, really just put it in play and ruin your day type of players and type of offense. And they just cause chaos on the base paths typically. And Amy Hogue talked about it even in the fall report for D1 softball. She talked about how it's going to be a little bit different. Like, that's the type of team that she's been used to coaching. And maybe that's her favorite type of team to coach. But now the dynamics have changed a little bit with new personnel. And can we get people on and then leave the yard and get them in? So I think there's so many different new things happening at once that it really, managing that is the biggest part, really. And every head coach talks about it, that their job is much more than just coaching or teaching, like maybe a traditional coach's role has been. It's very much more the management of the team as a whole. And I think we're going to see that come into play even more so this season with all of these Pac-12 alum schools.
I agree with you about of all the Pac-12 schools that had to change conferences. I mean, from the power conference standpoint in particular, the teams going to the Big 12, it seemed to be the more easier fit. Like Caitlin Lowe is excited from the standpoint. She says it's actually made her non-conference scheduling easier to fill, because what she's gotten some deals where she's going to play the old, the fellow Pac-12s. Like, she's got UCLA on the schedule. I think she's got Stanford on the schedule. Washington is on the schedule. That normally it's harder for her to schedule non-conference under the old Pac-12 schools, but now they've come with those terms. And yes, you got to travel some out in softball here. As far as the Big 12, there's not a lot of big travel. The furthest you got to go is Orlando.
Right.
Nobody complains about coming to Orlando. So,
well, and it's once
compared
right?
to
once.
What, like UCLA.
Once.
Yeah.
Correct. Once. There is no West Virginia, for example, like basketball and the other sports has to travel to. Big Ten, for example, they got to go to, the places they've never imagined they would be.
Piscataway, New Jersey.
And not to mention deal with some interesting weather back in the March days. We're speaking about Jenna Becerra, by the way, who will be covering, does a lot of stuff on ACC Network Extra. I got to get that right. I got to get used to that. I was like very hesitant. I don't know how to introduce you anymore, Jenna. For years, I just called you, Pac-12, and I can't do that anymore. So I'm getting used to it. She does. If there's a sport that's on ACC Network Extra, by the way, she's probably called it. I'm just going to leave it as that. Fair? I think that's fair. That's a fair statement.
Getting there, certainly. Yeah.
Trust me, you've called some stuff. You've called already stuff that I may never even imagine of ever calling, like amateur wrestling, gymnastics. You've done it all. So I bring all this up because Stanford and Cal are in the ACC. Both lost a lot of personnel, a lot of focus on who Stanford lost, but both have lost a lot in the pitching circle at Stanford Cal. Let's start with Stanford. That's the big elephant in the room. Everybody's the sense I'm getting from a lot of people is they're counting them out because of losing Naja and losing Miss Kennedy, as I like to call her. That said, you talked to Jessica Allister on the fall report. People would say, "Ooh, Stanford could be in for a rough year." Your response would be what?
Don't underestimate. Isn't that something that we've actually, I think, learned from all of these Pac-12 alum schools? I think there tends to be in the past this level of underestimation, and then all of a sudden we get to the postseason and look who's remaining. It's actually quite a few of those former Pac-12 teams. So with Stanford in particular, I think an advantage that they have is Coach Jessica Allister for some obvious reasons. But when we're talking about, again, this realignment issue, because it's just coast to coast affecting everybody, her time at Minnesota for 7 years, that travel is brutal in the Big Ten. They can't host anything. They're on the road for 7 or 8 weeks straight to start the season. That experience, along with associate head coach Jessica Mendoza, associate head coach Jessica Merchant, having had that experience, and then Sarah Groenewegen had that experience as a player playing under them at Minnesota. So with all of that in mind, it's not something that's new to them. And actually what they have, hosting a lot of stuff and being on the West Coast in the preseason and then traveling for ACC later, is more manageable to them than what they had to do at Minnesota. So for some of those new changes, I think they're pretty unfazed about it. And I think there's some excitement around being in the football stadium this year as well. So there's just a certain energy about the team, because it's a very cool environment to have your university invest in your program enough to literally build a field in the middle of the football stadium, because you refuse to not have a softball facility on campus for the 1 year you need to build a multi-million-dollar facility. I mean, that's a sign of confidence, right? The freshman class is also a class that Coach Allister's very excited about. I think it's a little bit flipped from maybe in the past. Like last year, for example, the defense was pretty young. The entire infield underclassmen, freshmen at the corner, sophomores up the middle, even a sophomore taking over for Taylor Gindelsberger and Emily Jones in center field. So a lot of the key positions defensively were young, and they were going to need to sort of take their lumps early and learn. This year, it's kind of the opposite. Coach Allister feels like, okay, they got some great experience under the belt. We have some fantastic infielders coming in as well as freshmen. Now it's their turn to support the pitching staff, which is made up of 3 arms this year. So there's the freshman, Zoe Prestico, who Coach Allister says has swing and miss stuff. And she doesn't say those types of things lightly. She's a lefty. We haven't seen a lefty at Stanford in a while. And then, of course, Alyssa Houston, who I didn't even realize had broken her finger towards the end of last season. So that was part of the reason that we didn't see her more often in the circle. And then Kylie Chung, who we've seen some, but she's going to take on a larger role this year. So it is a smaller pitching staff, but they have more of that foundation around them, both offensively and defensively this year. So it's just, can they support their pitching staff essentially? But I think Danielle O'Toole is a big factor in being able to help support that.
Boy, Vic, how times have changed. It used to be 3 pitchers. That's plenty, right?
Yeah.
Now we're trained to like, oh, I don't know. That's very thin. But yet UCLA and Florida were in this boat.
You're like,
right? They were in this boat where, they only got a couple of pitchers. UCLA, not a lot of experience pitching. Florida literally had no experience pitching-wise with Keegan Rothrock. Both made the World Series. So you can still make it with only a couple of arms. Do you see this, Jenna, as the 3 arms splitting the pitching, or do you think somebody grabs this, eventually establishes themselves as the Keegan Rothrock of the staff, like Florida kind of became basically through almost every pitch for Florida in the postseason? How do you envision that pitching? Because I think that's going to be interesting to see how that plays out.
It's an interesting question because 2 out of the 3 pitchers are underclassmen. And again, Alyssa Houston kind of didn't get a full season, quote unquote, due to the injuries last year as a freshman. I would imagine that her and Zoe would take on the majority of the innings, and that Kylie Chung will be there for relief, maybe the occasional start, etc. But it's definitely, they're going to be spreading the love this year. They're going to need to, because like you said, gone are the days where, one or two pitchers will get it done for you. You need really a whole staff. And I think the most that Stanford had in the past 5 years was maybe like 6 or 7 arms, potential arms. Like Kylie Chung was sort of a part-time pitcher, for example, previously. And now they have 3. So it looks a little bit different, but they'll be sharing the load for sure.
Vic, what's your thoughts here? Give me the landscape here.
I think with Stanford, the biggest thing for them is that Jenna alluded to it. The fact that you have someone like Coach Alistair who's used to spending February and early March on the road in those non-conference tournaments and then going into conference play, that experience, especially with Jessica Merchant, who was there with her, will serve her well. My key for them, I feel, is that how do they manage that travel in the ACC, especially because we're seeing this not just with Stanford, but a lot of teams, Eric. They get out to the state, they're playing a conference game, they'll play a midweek to get acclimated into those conditions before they play a conference. Arizona State, for a perfect example, prior to their series at UCF, they're going to play a doubleheader in the land versus Stetson. So that way they get used to being on the Eastern time clock, get themselves acclimated with the Florida weather, whatever it may be during that particular week. We make it all the freaking weather for what we've been getting the last few weeks, Jenna. So that way they're ready to go when they play that Big 12 series versus the Knights. Stanford's going to do the same thing. Other schools in their new leagues are going to do the same thing. To help alleviate the travel, let's get some softball in while we're there instead of just traveling, waiting until Wednesday or Thursday, and then traveling for the conference series. It also gives a chance for more team bonding and a team development as well.
Let me ask you this, Jenna, because people are bringing this up on the chat by Wimblero and Feg9. They bring up a good point. They're asking about the tournament ramifications of this. You could have Cal or Stanford, for example, eligible to play in a regional at UCLA, which would never have been thought of, but could happen based on a bus there, 400-mile radius. There you go, Wimblero, tuning in from Japan. We got audiences from Japan, Jenna, so we gotta make sure we address
Japan, Canada. We are an international brand.
We're international. Rob from
global.
Canada. Rob from Canada. We're a global show, so I can't ignore the question. You know this. You and I cover a lot of sports. Volleyball. They went to 32 seeds in the volleyball tournament. That has not happened in softball. Would you be in favor of 32 seeds? You like it the way it is in 16 seeds? And do you have concerns of we might see former Pac-12 schools put together in regionals because of geography?
It's interesting, right? The geography wasn't a big enough factor to keep in mind for realignment, but it's still a factor when it comes to the NCAA tournament.
You heard that, Vic? You heard that, right, Vic? You heard it?
I heard it. Oh, hold on, wait. Scott Van Pelt has some thoughts about Pac-12 people playing each other in possibly in the NCAA.
That makes a lot of sense.
Wait,
because that makes a lot of sense.
Thank you, Scott.
Did not expect an MVP cameo, but there we go. We just got one. Go ahead, Jenna.
Yeah. I with the rules as they stand now, I mean, it's definitely possible. Just like they're scheduling purposefully in the preseason to play against each other, like Stanford's making their way to Arizona this year in the preseason, as you mentioned, Eric. Yeah, I mean, if you keep that in mind, I think with the 32 seeds, I'd need to see what that would look like exactly first. But I think I think I'm not a fan of the 400-mile rule in general. Let me just say that. I feel like that, if anything, I don't know if it's that I'm like, yes, we need 32 seeds, or if it's like, can we get rid of that rule? I just think that it should be more.
Can we do both, please?
Yeah,
well,
I mean,
I can answer that because I've talked. We've been fortunate. We've had the committee chairperson on this show since 2021, the only show that's done that, and I have asked that question to the committee chairperson, and they have been very honest. In fairness to them, I know at times it can be polarizing with the selections they make and all that. But they've been honest with me in saying the 400-mile radius is probably not going away. That's not a committee thing. That's an NCAA thing. So yell at them. That's the message I've got is yell at the NCAA. Don't yell at us at the committee. We do not make the rules.
I don't know if y'all are aware of this right now, but the NCAA has a lot more pressing issues on their plate than the 400-mile radius rule. But that's neither here nor there.
I'm just a reporter reporting what
You're just an advocate. You're just an advocate.
I do think the seeding thing could alleviate some of that because it has helped in volleyball. There is more travel in volleyball now than ever before because of the seeding. Teams, the 2 seeds in particular, travel all over the place instead of being bused to a certain region. So I think that's probably the compromise we're going to get. So I'm sorry, both of you. I know we all don't like the 400-mile radius, but I don't think that's going away. In fact, if you look at basketball, they quietly have added their own little geography, with little pod systems, and even the football matchups in the playoff were peculiar, like geography friendly. Just saying.
Well, and to be clear, especially in the power conferences, a lot of in-conference rivals in the past have been very used to meeting each other in supers.
Sure.
That's not something that's new. What would be new is to do it that early in the regional round, which might make regionals a little more interesting. I'll say that. But yeah, I think we know what changes we'd like to see made. It's just managing it in the meantime.
We need you to be like in charge of college sports, Jenna. That's what we need.
Yeah, if I could just make all the decisions, great. I don't know. That'd be a tough job, but
I would endorse
at least I'd know what's happening.
That's just true. All right, a couple things before we let you go. Give me let me actually bring up Cal. I forgot to bring up Cal and Oregon State.
Yeah.
Cal, I'm more worried about than Stanford in the ACC. You brought up the reasons why I'm pretty confident Stanford will be fine in the ACC. Heck, if you look at some of the Stanford sports, very quietly are doing pretty well in the ACC. Shh, don't let anybody know their basketball team's actually doing well. How the heck did you get that guy, your coach, by the way? Anyway, we'll talk about that off the air. Cal's the one I'm more worried about, Jenna, just because it's no secret they've had some financial issues to begin with. Though now they got to travel a ton. They don't have the experience of traveling like a Jessica Allister does. Where's Cal? And then Oregon State, that's unique because, yes, they're in the West Coast Conference. It's a softer league than the Pac, so in theory, but they lost a lot of personnel to the portal that decided to go somewhere else. Laura Berg had to rebuild that, and we don't know what the future of Oregon State, I think, is going back to the Pac at some point. I can't keep up with realignment, but where are we with these two here as far as 2025 from that standpoint?
Well, and yeah, with the realignment, it's like what affects football and basketball, and then what affects everybody else too. Like how does that exactly work? So that's TBD in a lot of ways. But I think with Cal, yes, the travel is newer. I really encourage, and this is why the atmosphere environment in the athletic departments across the board, across sports matters. Because if anything, these spring sports have an advantage in terms of learning from their counterparts in the fall and winter sports. Like what worked well for them. They're having a lot of these conversations between coaches, between trainers, between strength and conditioning folks. Do we stay on West Coast time? Do we change to East Coast time? Do we do all of those things? And so that's something that I would, and I'm sure that Chelsea Spencer is doing, but highly recommend that Cal softball also do, is like do that research, get that intel from within the Cal family. But I will say the whole idea of playing on the road, or at least not playing at home, not new to them, because their stadium is a little bit more limited in terms of size. It's kind of squeezed in there at Levine Fricky Field. They don't have lights, so they haven't been able to host like regionals and certain postseason things, and they don't get to host as many preseason tournaments. They'll actually go to Stanford's, not play Stanford directly, but play some of the other teams, for example, who are in the tournament. They do that quite often.
Really? The rivals working together.
They do. They work together. And it's funny. I mean, as with anything else, softball's a growing but a small world at the same time. Jessica Allister, Chelsea Spencer played against each other in college, right? So they get it. I think Chelsea has mentioned Coach Allister is one of her mentors, but also one of her biggest competitors, right? So it's that fun sort of balance that they have. But so my point being, though, that they're used to playing away from home. So that aspect is not necessarily a new concept. It's really more the logistics of it all and the travel. But I think, losing Danielle O'Toole and going to the rivals a little rough, because Danielle O'Toole is clearly, from her own experience as a player, as an Olympian, as the AUX champion, as, doing what she did at Arizona in her collegiate days, that's huge. And I think Cal really benefited from that, even though she was on maternity leave for part of the season last year. But I think some of the pitchers who stepped up, like a Haley Archer, who has since graduated, et cetera, like some of that was because of the tone that Danielle O'Toole set. However, I do think Kylie Cuico she was the one who stepped in when Danielle O'Toole was on maternity leave, calling pitches, working with the bullpen. She's, of course, still there. So I think they still have some of that foundation, and I think they have some rising stars too, even offensively, like Elon Butler, who was all Pac-12 and getting some more recognition on a national scale last year. So I think talent there. Again, it's that management piece, right? And that's why the roles, for many reasons, but that's one of the reasons the roles of a head coach has shifted over the years.
It's going to be interesting. And Oregon State, yes, it's a softer league, but there's also less room for error because you're not going to get an at-large out of the West Coast Conference. You got to win that automatic bid.
Yeah, typically a one big league, right? One thing that was kind of interesting is I remember talking to both Tariah Flowers at LMU as well as Laura Berg at Oregon State about how they were former USA teammates and now they're going to actually play against each other in league play, which is new for them. So they're excited for those types of things. I think Tariah and some of the other existing teams in the league are excited because they feel like, look at the experience that Oregon State has that they'll bring into this conference now to sort of elevate what that looks like. And yes, it's a quote unquote softer league, I guess, because you go from the Pac-12, which not only historically, but even recently, including Oregon State, have had some runs to the World Series, et cetera. But I just think it still comes down to just what you're doing one day at a time. That's what every single coach talks about. That's what players talk about. Anytime that they feel off balance or like they're struggling is usually because they're not doing that. They're either thinking too far ahead, living in the past. They're not in the present, focused on what's in front of them. It's just going to be that times 100 right now that we're in this new era.
All right, last question. Well, actually, I got two because people have actually been really intrigued by the football stadium.
Yes.
Have you taken batting practice?
Friend Thing 9. Yes. He's asking, since you'll be playing in the stadium, Jenna, the distance down a first base line in playing at Stanford Stadium on that football field. What is that experience going to be like for you in general?
And have you taken batting practice yet?
Okay, so I have not. What? But I kind of was supposed to on Friday. They had like an open media able to come, open practice, and you're going to be able to take BP on the field. However, I was calling gymnastics and they were hosting North Carolina. So I wasn't able to actually go do that. It was raining anyway. So it was a lot different than I think they initially thought it would look like. But from my conversations, I was able to MC the preseason barbecue that Stanford has. This is the third year that they've done it with season ticket holders, donors, etc. And just chatting with some of the players and the coaches as well. They're very happy with the conditions of the field. They're still making a few final tweaks as to what certain things will look like, but the dirt, they said, feels good. The bullpens feel good. They feel solid, which is a big deal, right? Because they built this from nothing on the football field. But yes, the measurements are very interesting. So previously, the Boyd and Joe Smith Family Stadium that's being rebuilt was 205 down the lines and 220 in center field. I believe it's still either 205 or 200. Don't quote me on that down left field, but it's more like 190 in right field because of just the limitations of the dimensions that are in Stanford Stadium. However, 190, I mean, that's Easton Stadium for UCLA. That's what Cal's stadium has at Levine Fricky Field. So it's not something new, but there's a lot of lefties on the Stanford team. And people, despite the fact that they doubled their home runs from 2023 to 2024, people still would comment like, oh, well, they don't hit enough home runs, et cetera. You might see some more this year with all the lefties they have leaving in right field. We'll see.
Ooh. All right, I just want video of you taking batting practice. And if you could do play-by-play on your own batting practice, that would even be better.
Oh, God.
That would be awesome. I want video of that. All right, last thing, and then we'll let you go there. Who are your 8 World Series teams you're picking? You do not have to announce your national title pick because we're going to full disclosure, we're going to unveil some season predictions on d1softball.com, so we encourage you to read that later this week. But give me your 8 that you think could go to OKC, and if there's any of those teams that you like winning conference championships.
You weren't gonna let me slide, were you? You weren't gonna give me that.
If the roles were reversed, you wouldn't
let anyone slide.
That's not what we do it here at In the Circle. We don't slide in the circle.
No, we don't.
Well, so I would say, I think in our D1 softball poll for the top 25 preseason stuff, I'm always, as a former player, that's the type of noise you block out as a coach or a player to go into it. But for us and what we do, it's interesting conversation, right? And I think our poll, while my individual ballot looked a little bit different than what actually came out from all of our ballots being combined, there were definitely several in the top, especially 5, that I think felt accurate for what we know now. So if you're looking at like a Texas, Oklahoma, Florida, Oklahoma State, all teams that actually went last year too, but that have certain things in place that I think that they could make it again this year. UCLA is another one, again, with those 2 returning pitchers who's apparently that was all they needed at the end of the day. But then adding Addison Fisher, I think, is huge. So I would say those 5 feel like the top 5 in terms of this preseason where we're currently at right now. I'm very interested in what happens on the field between the lines. But in terms of what we know right now, I think that's where we're at with those 5 teams. Outside of that, I think it gets a little bit trickier because that's, I think, where a lot of the magic happens sometimes, is beyond just like the ones that seem like they're easy to pencil in. I think a quote unquote sleeper team, I don't even know if you can necessarily call them a sleeper team, is Texas A&M. And the reason I say that is because they just missed out of OKC, one of the best super regionals we've ever seen, against Texas last year. And I think we had them at number 9 in our preseason poll. So they're technically outside of that 8, but I think that's a team that we 100% should be keeping our eyes on when it comes to Oklahoma City this year. And I think
Nate's very excited about that. Nate Kearney is excited about that.
Oh, yes, I see that. I see that.
Jenna, I just take for the record, Nate on his very live show last year said A&M would make it to Super Regionals. We all laughed at him, and, well, we all had egg on our face. So, yes.
Amanda and I went on, did a live with NCAA softball with Michaela Chester preseason last year. And I remember we listed our 8, and I included UCLA and Duke at the time in mine. And at that time, it was a bit of a struggle for UCLA. Like, that was not on a lot of people's cards that early on. But then, you know what? They both made it to OKC. So I'm just saying. Just saying. I think Tennessee is another team that we could be looking at. Carlin Pickens, I mean, period, right? Like, she's just such an asset. And then I would say Florida State. Now, I know that I didn't say Texas Tech. I think they can certainly make a run for it. And then, of course, Nebraska has Jordy Ball too. But these other programs that I've mentioned have proven their ability to get to Oklahoma City, if that makes sense, because 100%. So is NiJaree Canady, right? And she'll be leading the way for Texas Tech. However, a lot of the folks from Louisiana that transferred, they haven't gone there yet. So it's kind of like what was said earlier. It's not that they can't, it's that we haven't seen it yet. But as an athlete, as a coach, that's one of the fun things to do, right? Is do things that we haven't seen yet. But I would say those are probably my 8 if I had to choose literally right now.
We nearly agree on every pick. Not every pick. I will unveil my picks at the end of the show, but it's scary that we're pretty much thinking alike, which is, I don't know if I should be excited about that or nervous.
I don't know if I should be excited about that or nervous. I'm not sure.
Well,
Victor looks hesitant.
Comfortable about my picks then.
We'll see.
Time will tell.
Time will tell. Wimblero's excited. I think you and Wimblero on the same page as far as the World Series picks. So Wimblero, who's in Japan, is excited on that. That is Jenna Becerra. All right, tell the audience, because, man, you got a million things you got going on. You got a lot of hats you wear. So this is the time of year where I will let you the platform to promote what you'll be doing, because you're doing a lot. So feel free to promote what parts you want to promote?
Doing a lot, but you know what? I have to give a shout out to you two because the relentless work from In the Circle has been so fun to watch. Most recently, of course, Big 12 Media Days, but you two, Eric and Victor, surpassing 900 episodes of In the Circle recently. And obviously, most recently, the last year or so, with the D1 softball umbrella. Just kudos. Like I have to give that shout out because that is incredible. And I think, have we confirmed this is the longest running? Yes. Have we confirmed that this is the longest running softball podcast yet?
Yes, it is the longest episodic softball program in the world.
There it is. So before I talked about my stuff, had to acknowledge your guys' stuff.
Thank you.
But D1 softball in general, follow everything that we're doing. We're doing a ton. In the Circle is part of that. The D1 softball podcast is going to start up again with Amanda Lorenz and myself.
Oh yeah, Athletes Unlimited's own Amanda Lorenz.
Yeah.
Athletes Unlimited champion Amanda Lorenz, and also drafted recently to the Volts. So super exciting. We're back as well. Some podcasts that you can tune into all year round. Well, especially In the Circle all year round, but all season for us, for Amanda and I. And then, yes, I'll be doing a lot of broadcasting. Still a lot of the Stanford home events and potentially Cal. So a lot of ACC Network and ACC Network Extra. And I do still have actually another gymnastics meet I'm doing in March, which I was like, oh, that's weird. This is softball season. Normally it's just softball and baseball, but I'll be on a lot of those, on the call for a lot of those. And then of course, separately too, these two have also been guests on this, but the Believe in Softball podcast is back for season 6, which I'm still trying to wrap my head around. Yes. Thursday.
That might make you the second longest softball podcast out there. Just saying.
It's
we'll have to calculate that, Eric, off air.
Yeah, we'll figure that out. But yes, still not by that 900 mark like you all.
Well,
but, you know,
we're not smart enough to take off seasons. We just keep going.
There you go. Such thing as an off season with us.
There's no off season for In the Circle. Yeah, no. You're in the circle, you don't leave the circle. That's how it works. But yeah. Thursday, February 6th is opening day or first pitch of season 6 for Believe in Softball. And that's Believe Network. Some of you may know that, but it's BLEAV is how you spell it. So Believe in Softball on Instagram, Twitter, as well as all the podcast platforms, including YouTube.
Jenna, always a pleasure. Hopefully we'll cross paths this year at some point.
Hopefully, like we have a choice.
There.
Y'all kind of work together now.
Yeah.
I don't know what to let out of the bag. I don't want to just say, hey, we'll see you here. And then things change.
Even before we officially work together, like, what are you talking about? Of course, we'll see each other.
Yes, we will see each other plenty, Jenna. And I will apologize in advance because you'll see it when my bracketology comes out. I apologize where I place Stanford in my bracketology. We won't give it away here. We'll tune in and people can tune in.
I think we'll be getting some. You're not the only one who will be getting apologies from this season. I think.
Woo! I got that. Whoa! It's getting a little rise ball right at me there. That's good. Very good. All right, Jenna. I know you got stuff to do there. Hey, thanks for always coming on. You're one of our most frequent guests, which will continue throughout the year.
I think Victor's right though. Am I a guest anymore? Kind of.
Thank you.
You know,
you still got appearances. I mean,
he's a fan. Look, Eric, just like we're a part of the D1 softball family, she's a part of the In the Circle family.
True.
Exactly.
Touché. Very good. All right, buddy. Have fun. We'll talk soon.
All right. Thanks, guys.
No problem. That's Jenna Becerra joining us for our traditional get together.
Yes.
It's good.
6 seasons of Believe in Softball, man.
I just feel like yesterday it started, right? Like I think it's gonna work.
You know what? No, she deserves. I didn't say that. She deserves a round of applause for 6 seasons of that. I mean, goodness gracious.
Very well.
Yeah, thank you.
We have sound effects here, everybody. We got sound effects here.
We're getting. Show. Let's bring back Justin McLeod because he's been in the backstage area listening to all the sound effects. Mr. McLeod, how are you feeling about these sound effects that we're implementing into our live shows now?
didn't applaud for me, so I take no opinion on the matter. No.
Okay, hold
Wow.
on, wait. Justin McLeod, ladies and gentlemen. Justin McLeod, Justin, softball editor of D1 Softball. Longest funny guest. Give him a round of applause.
I couldn't help myself on that one. I couldn't help myself.
Justin,
I enjoyed the sound effect.
See, there you go. There's your applause. There you go. Justin McLeod, ladies and gentlemen. Justin McLeod, ladies. Oh, by the way, before we continue, Eric.
Wait, hold on.
Why?
You're getting called out here, Vic.
I know.
Okay?
Rob, don't worry. As a matter of fact, Rob, be patient. I got an announcement, and I will share with you what that will mean. So,
fire alarm, Vic.
I am a man of my word. We're gonna be dealing with that. Don't worry. Don't
fire alarm, Vic.
Rob, don't worry. I heard you. I see you.
Nate says hi, by the way.
Hi, Nate. I hope you like Jenna's picks.
All right, we'll get to our picks later in the show. Let's talk a little Big 12. Let's talk NiJaree Canady. Jenna brought it up. That's the big story everywhere. Victor, I think we'll play the clip here with NiJaree. We had her on the podcast talking about reuniting with Jerry Glasgow, or uniting with Jerry Glasgow, and the impact that will have on her as a two-way player, as well as the Big 12.
Yeah, so he's definitely, we all joke around, he's kind of like a grandfather. Like he, like him, and Miss Vicky, his wife, well, they're both just incredible. She'll make us cookies. They're the best cookies I think I've ever, best cookies I've ever had. But he just embraced us all. We've had like Christmas parties at his house and things like that. And honestly, he's as competitive as it gets. Like he wants to win every game, and he wants to put his best foot forward every single game and just win and compete. And he wants the same for us. Like he knows softball's about ups and downs, but all he asks is that we compete every single pitch.
I hope they had it, gentlemen. That's part of that interview that Eric had with what do you have to call her, Miss Canady?
Miss Canady, I do. I like to respect the great ones there. Really enjoyed talking to her. You can check that out on enjoyed talking to her on In the Circle on D1 Softball, the podcast feed, as well as on the YouTube channel, or one-on-one with her. And let's go, Victor. Justin, I'm going to start with you. She referenced Grandpa Glasgow. Give me your thoughts on Jerry. This was the #1 head coaching hire, according to your rankings on D1 Softball. How will Jerry fare at Texas Tech? Everybody's focused on NiJaree. But what about Jerry and building this team at Texas Tech? What are you expecting from Jerry with this roster, with NiJaree in the circle, but a lot of new faces?
Well, the things that will help them. Go ahead, Justin.
Well, let's get Justin there.
No, that to me is the biggest thing. That to me is a bigger deal than NiJaree being there, because we saw what NiJaree did with Stanford. Texas Tech can't afford to just do that. It'd be great for them. Don't get me wrong; they'd take a World Series semifinal appearance or two. But with what's around NiJaree and bringing her in, they can't afford to do that. That to me is the biggest thing. I think Texas Tech's got the pieces. Maya Davis coming over from UL, Alexa Langeliers. I actually really like Lauren Allred, the first baseman. She was hurt last year with a back problem. She was really good as a freshman, and I thought she was going to be really good as a sophomore. So I think Texas Tech has the pieces. I also like Tony, the freshman shortstop. I think that kid's going to be good. So I think they have the pieces. But the thing is, we saw it last year with Nebraska. When Jordy got hurt, Nebraska didn't crater, but Nebraska wasn't great. Like without Jordy, Nebraska was just another team. You add Jordy to that mix, different story. So that's the thing with Texas Tech. With NiJaree, what about the days NiJaree doesn't pitch? She can't pitch every game. What about the days she doesn't pitch? That to me is a bigger deal than her being there, because if that question isn't answered in the affirmative or positively, her being there is really not going to make much of a difference. They'll make the tournament, yes. Might make a super, yes. But for what they want to do and for what they can do with a pitcher like NiJaree right now, and I think the talent around her, if that talent around her doesn't come through to back her up, it's not going to be nearly as fruitful of an errand as they think it could be.
Victor, what do you consider success in Lubbock?
For them, making it to super. Because you highlighted their history, Eric. They've only been to the NCAA tournament 6 times in their history. Never made it to supers. The closest they were, I believe it was in the late 90s, when their head coach at the time was a young upstart by the name of Renee Gillespie. By the way, shout out Coach Gillespie, missing the entire season due to personal health. I want to wish her well. There will be pressure on Texas Tech, yes. There's going to be a lot of national attention on Texas Tech, rightfully so. The thing with Texas Tech that I'm sure Coach Glasgow will stress to his team, the ups and downs you experience in March and in February and March will serve you well in April and May. So if you get off to a rough stretch, that's going to be expected. Because let's remember, this is going to be the first time that a lot of these newcomers are playing in real game situations. I understand fall ball, but they're exhibitions. But when you're in the thick of it, especially with Texas Tech starting off their season at opening Thursday night, that Justin, you're going to be out in Clearwater, that's going to be the first time they're really going to be in between those lines in a game that's going to have meaning and significance. So how do they respond if they have any sort of early season struggles? Also, if they get off to a strong start, that's going to build their confidence, and who knows what's going to happen. And let's remember also, gentlemen, they start Big 12 play versus Oklahoma State that second week in March. So that's going to be the next litmus test for Texas Tech in terms of where they are in the Big 12 compared to Oklahoma State, who's the preseason favorites in the league.
Well, go back to UL too, and how the one thing I look at down there, I talked about it earlier, talking about Landry at Oklahoma. The way game management went at UL wasn't always the best. Now, they still had some success in those latter years. So, I mean, I'm not dissing Jerry Glasgow's skills as a coach. I think he's a hell of a coach. But there were some game management pieces in there through the course of time that maybe should have been made a different direction based on the eventual results. I think that's going to be key too at Texas Tech. You get a lot of the same players, some of the same game management pieces in there. That's something to keep an eye on too.
All right, let's give a couple quick topics here. Big 12 here. Who is the best pitcher in the Big 12 that's not NiJaree Canady?
Ruby Malin.
Yeah.
Transferred from Washington, Oklahoma State. Victor's in a nodding agreement. A rare agreement. Victor and Justin agreeing on something. That's wow.
Enjoy while you can, folks.
I mean, what's next? Luka Doncic gets traded? Oh, wait, that happened.
So where's the Royal Rumble?
All right. Player of the year, Big 12.
I like Carly Godwin personally. I think Godwin's the goods.
Vic?
Shaylin Govan, Baylor.
Arguably the two best first basemen in the country, according to D1 Softball and many others. Two best in the Big 12. I will go with Govan. Slight edge over Godwin for player of the year. I do think the pitching situation is interesting in the Big 12. Malin's kind of seems the safe answer based on her pedigree, but I do think there's some interesting questions in that league. For example, Kason Korth, the BYU kid, out last year.
Healthy.
Could be a sleeper pick there. If BYU has a good year, UCF's very young in the circle a little bit, but it probably is Ruby Malin. It probably is Ruby Malin.
Yeah.
How many give me the over under Big 12 over under 5.5 teams in the tournament. They got 5 in last year, had 2 his first 4 out last year. They have not had 7. Okay, so you're going over 5.5. Justin? Over under 5.5 Big 12 teams in the tournament.
You're asking me?
Yes.
Sorry, I had a hotel Wi-Fi issue, so I didn't even hear you ask that the first time.
Yeah, there it is. So, ding!
It's officially softball season.
Yes,
hotel Wi-Fi is officially softball season. 5.5. Over, I'm going to say 6, I think.
Oh, there you go. Callan says, what about Dariana Orm? That is the wild card for Baylor. Daria, how many innings does she have in her body? I talked to Glenn Moore. If you heard it on the Big 12 Media Week, they're going to be very careful with her. They're going to want to make sure she's healthy. by the time we get to conference and everything. We'll see if she can hold up. Big interest. I do like Arizona, by the way. Devin Netz. That's another name to watch. They got a lot of arms, though. She may not throw enough to win like pitcher of the year or anything like that, but could be in the mix for player of the year. She's a two-way player with Arizona there. I like Arizona a lot. Let me ask you guys this question. I think we all agree the SEC is the number one conference.
Yeah.
Who's the number two conference in the sport?
It's the Big 12 if Texas Tech performs to expectations. A top three of Oklahoma State, Arizona, and Texas Tech. And truthfully, I think they're really only going to have one true bottom feeder this year. I think the mid-pack and the Big 12 is going to eat itself up a little bit, which is going to help from an RPI perspective. I think it's as long as Texas Tech performs to expectation, I think it's the Big 12. I like the top half of other leagues maybe, but the bottom half drags them down. I think the Big 12's closest to the middle across the board.
I think it's the Big 12 regardless of if I think it was the Big 12 going into the season simply because you look at the depth of the Big 12 going into this season. And if Texas Tech lives up to expectations, they will clearly be the number two conference with Texas Tech, Oklahoma State, Baylor. And you can't forget about Iowa State with Angelina Allen. They made a push to make the tournament. BYU, if they are healthy, you saw how close they were, Eric. They almost slugged their way to a tournament bid. They were in the first four out. UCF, they're young. They're going to have a tough schedule, so they can pick up some wins early. They can build some confidence there. Don't underestimate Arizona State. I think what Coach Bartlett is building with that program, this might be the season that if they're healthy, they could break through and try and compete to get back into the NCAA tournament.
Yeah, I'm with you guys. And we're going to make it a sweep. Big 12. But I
will say this, though. I will say this in defense of the Big 10. How does Minnesota, how does a Michigan handle now that you got Washington, UCLA, and Oregon? The Big 10 has the chance to be 1 through 6 right there with the Big 12, but it's just the depth of the conference as a whole that I feel the Big 12 is better than the Big 10. It's just the overall depth of the conference.
Well, let's segue that to the Big 10 at that point. Actually, before we do that, Big 12 champion picks real quick.
Oklahoma State.
Yeah.
Vic?
Cowgirl.
All right, there we go. Bulletin board material for everybody else. For everybody going Oklahoma State win Big 12 there.
Feel free to use free to use at your apparel.
Oh boy. Big 10. I think I have a lot of questions about this league. I am in the camp that thinks UCLA should run roughshod in this conference if they play to their abilities. I know everybody likes Nebraska. Jordy Ball is back. Can we see her last a little longer? Do we know what the supporting cast looks like before we declare Nebraska? I want to see that a little bit. Oregon's very young. I have questions there. Missy Lombardi knows how to develop pitchers. I get that, but they're very young. Washington, we discussed earlier. Man, they lost so much there.
I don't know. I don't know what to make of Washington. There are people in the chat, Eric, tonight that were saying that Washington could miss the tournament altogether.
I don't think that's a crazy thought. I think if it's close, they're going to get the benefit of the doubt who they are. But there are a lot of questions about that roster. I mean, Justin, I don't even. What is it? Who's their ace? Like, what's their pitching going to look like? I mean, forget the position question marks. They have position players. They got questions all pitching wise.
Ace probably has to be Stevie Hansen.
Stevie Hansen, who we don't know if she can carry a pitching staff. Never has.
Ace is a very loose term on that roster.
Sure.
Right?
Yeah.
Northwestern lost their ace. They're going to be young in the circle a little bit.
They got Canada. They got Robinson.
They do, but the level. This was not a very good league last year. This was not a very good league in the RPI. The committee did them a solid. Got them 4 bids in. I don't want to rehash it, but they were fortunate to get 4. I don't know. I think there's a lot more questions about teams in the Big Ten than any other Power 4. You could tell me the one team I do like a lot is Michigan. They bring back that core. Erickson offensively. Michigan had a big year offensively and company. Ohio State's basically starting over. They got Karen Kumar as a hire. Iowa, you just mentioned no Coach Gillespie. I think there's questions there.
And they lose a lot of senior leadership. Grace Blaines, Braylee Klosterman.
Right, and that's from a group that missed the Big Ten tournament last year. For being honest, Wisconsin struggled last year. Wisconsin struggled last year. I don't know, man. Justin, what's your thoughts on the Big Ten? Because I'm not buying the hype that they're going to be the second best conference. I actually think they're number 4. Now, if UCLA is obviously a juggernaut, but let's say if Oregon gets some answers and Nebraska, Jordy Ball is at a high leaving, then they might have they're closer to 2. But I'm not sure they're better than the ACC. But give me your thoughts on the Big Ten, Justin.
How deep you want me to dive into this pool?
We're on the air, so not
how
too
deep can you swim?
No. So let's look at the Big Ten as a whole. The only team that I have pretty complete confidence in is UCLA. I have question marks about every single other team. Next on that list would be Michigan. Just because, I mean, they look like the Michigan of old last year. After that, the question mark button, I keep holding my shift key down and hitting it. Because every team after those two, I have a lot of question marks about. I think Nebraska's got a chance to be really good. What scares me is what they were without Jordy last year. They added these transfers this year. I like the mission. You add the Cammonson twins, you add Hoffman. All 3 came from Arkansas. You got DiNardo from Arizona. You got McGee from Arizona State. So I like the mission of get some talent that's done something at a high level. Get a group of and Cusack from Wisconsin's in there too. So I like what they did with that. The problem, though, is every single one of those players comes with their own question marks. Hoffman was hurt last year at Arkansas, was a right fielder the year before that. The Cammonson twins had really good moments and then other moments where there was really no reason to have them in the lineup. So they were very hot and cold. I think somebody in the comment called it a Lauren Cammonson legacy game. That's really what it was. Lauren Cammonson had some great performances last year. Other times she was ice cold. And you never knew what you were getting. So that's my big thing with Nebraska. That's where all my question marks come from with them. I've seen them without Jordy. Okay, great. Now Jordy's back. Jordy's good for pretty much the extra 10 wins in my mind at minimum. But you still got to hit. You still got to outscore. Maybe Jordy's not Jordy of old. Maybe she gives up 3 runs instead of just 1. Well, that means you got to score 4. So that's my big thing with Nebraska. That's where all my question marks come with Nebraska. You got Northwestern that just doesn't look the same as they did a couple of years ago in the World Series. But when they made the World Series, they got Ashley Miller last year. I mean, how often have we talked about a transfer starring for Northwestern? It doesn't happen very often. She got him to a good place last year. Now she's gone too. Lauren Boyd's back from injury, but Lauren Boyd's not Miller. Lauren Boyd's not Danielle Williams. So, okay, how much can you put on her shoulders? So you get into these legacy Big Ten teams. Minnesota has taken a step or 2 back. Wisconsin's taken a step or 2 back. Ohio State has taken 5 steps back. Those all teams that were in the tournament the last couple of years. Indiana, I like the talent that's there, but Indiana barely snuck in last year. And I had question marks about them, and they barely snuck in. I like their talent. That's a team with question marks for me. Then you add in Oregon and Washington. Oregon's incredibly young. Like, I get the pitchers that they added via transfer, Grind and Chambers, Grind from Virginia Tech, Chambers from Cal State Fullerton. Both of them are good. And I'm not taking anything away from them. They are good. Neither one of them is going to go give you from the preseason. Neither one of them am I comfortable in the preseason sitting here and saying she's going to go win 20 games in the Big Ten. They're good. They're not great. So, okay, question marks along with that. Then you have Washington. I'm going to tell you, I don't see Washington missing the tournament. The reason I don't see them missing the tournament is I see them being a marginal, middle-of-the-road, okay team, probably close to the bubble, and they have a tournament history. Now, granted, we've seen Michigan and Arizona's tournament histories break over the last couple of years, but at some point, that comes in. Like, you can say it doesn't. At some point, familiar faces, they were in the World Series a couple of years ago. That's going to factor in. If it comes down to Washington versus an Indiana, something like that, Washington's tournament history, the fact that they're always in and this is a down year and look, they're still in contention, that's going to play in. That's just going to play in. That said, I don't think they're a good team at all. Like, I think they're going to get to that point. I don't think they're a very good team. Hanson's not proven to me as an ace. Reimer, the freshman from Canada, I've seen her pitch. She's the goods, but she's a freshman. And that's a heck of a lot of pressure to put on a freshman to shepherd and guide and lead a pitching staff, especially at a school like Washington. And then you throw in like a Romuno from Cal Poly or a Balk from Florida State. Like, I mean, come on. They might be fine, don't get me wrong, but we're not talking about big studs who are going to go win a lot of games in the Big Ten.
They struggled down the stretch last year with a way better roster that obviously disappeared after with the port, but they just plummeted, and they're going to have to overachieve. Now they're capable. Heather Tarr's obviously a Hall of Fame coach. She knows what she's doing, so I'm not going to discount them. But man, I just have so many questions there. And then teams like Indiana and Penn State, I like Penn State a little bit more. But remember, both of them were two of the last four in a very down Big Ten. How will they fare in a much improved, at least at the top Big Ten, where now the expectations are higher? Do they benefit from that experience last year and continue to grow, or do they take a punch and take a step back? I don't know. That's why we're going to watch, if you can find the games, which you may not.
They're easier now than they were in the Pac-12, at least.
Wow. Hey,
yeah.
I know what you're talking about.
If I had a comic rim shot, I'd play that right now for you, Justin. But good.
But you're not.
I will say this: I trust Penn State more. Out of Penn State, Indiana, I trust Penn State more to continue what they did last year than I do Indiana with Bridget Nemeth and Maddie Gordon leading the way for what they did last year, 35 wins. And I think Penn State has an opportunity to keep that level, and I trust them to do so more. As the chat continues to, you can tell, ladies and gentlemen, we're having fun on this.
One thing I'll say too about the Big Ten, the bottom tier, I enjoyed that. The bottom tier of the Big Ten is going to drag them down pretty significantly, I believe. Who those bottom 3 or 4 teams are going to be? I think there might be a little bit of a battle there for the bottom tier. But I think that bottom tier is going to drag the Big Ten down a good bit.
And then remember, the Big Ten's got this wacky schedule. There are going to be Big Ten series, folks. They're going to be played in Oklahoma City because of avoiding weather.
Well, clarify that there are what amount to like pods and bubbles. So for the first 2 weeks of Big Ten play, there's 2 separate pods of 4 teams each. They're going to go to Oklahoma City and play 2 of the other teams. So there's a pot of 4. Team A will play 2 of the other 3, et cetera, et cetera. So you get 4 games on the weekend, 1 game a day, and they're all conference games. It's the wackiest thing I've seen the Big Ten do, and I have seen the Big Ten do some wacky stuff.
Because that makes a lot of sense.
Scott Van Pelt there. Glad you explained that. It's very good. All right. Did not know Scott Van Pelt would be on this show, but I appreciate him.
Because that makes a lot of sense.
There you go.
It's what they do. But it's a very imbalanced schedule. So look at last year. Rutgers, people forget, finished 3rd in the Big Ten, but they had a very favorable Big Ten schedule. So their RPI was hurt by that because they played a lot of teams at the bottom. So I don't know, man. It's going to be fascinating to see. Jordy Ball is the wild card in all this, though, because if she delivers and Nebraska's good, that's going to be huge for the Big Ten. If they struggle behind her, that's not going to be good for them.
That's a problem.
All right, let me ask you both this. Let's continue my prop bets. Who has the better season this year? Jordy Ball in Nebraska or NiJaree Canady in Texas Tech? That matchup will be Saturday night. Justin will be there live, living in color in Clearwater. Victor may or may not be there. Who knows? I will not. I will be calling.
In individual season or teams?
Both.
Oh, next time I should just not ask for clarification.
Mr. Can I get 2 answers? Mr. I need now it's not so fun on the other side.
I like breaking the rules on my own terms. Thank you very much.
Yeah, fair.
Not ours.
I think Tech has the better season as a team. I think there's a chance if she's fully healthy and she's back to being Jordy. I think there's a chance that Jordy has a better season personally, just because she's going to feast on Big Ten opponents.
Jordy's schedule, by the way, from what Rhonda Ravel told me back in the fall when I had her on the podcast, two-way player as well. She wants to be a two-way player, very good base runner. I thought, can she stay healthy? They got to manage all that, but she will be a two-way player. Might be in the middle of their lineup, actually. We'll see. I do agree about that. I do agree about that feasting, which is why I actually think Nebraska might have the better path in the postseason. If you told me Nebraska ended up going further in the postseason, I wouldn't be shocked. Because, for example, if Texas Tech doesn't host, but they make the tournament, they may have to bus to a certain place that nobody wins ever. And it's called love, but not many people have had a lot of love there.
They don't have a lot of love for Love Field. That's what you're trying to say.
You got to look at the buses. Oklahoma State is a very likely potential destination for a Nebraska team that makes the tournament doesn't host. And if that happens, Oklahoma State's going to have to beat Jordy. Like, if that's the way it goes, it went.
That could happen too.
And by the way, gentlemen, I do want to share with you Nebraska's Big Ten schedule, because this is what a lot of people are looking at. Because look at it. Here's their Big Ten schedule: Ohio State, Minnesota, Purdue, Iowa, Northwestern, Indiana, Washington, and Maryland.
So
it's pretty manageable. Yeah.
Scroll one more up. Go back to where Washington's at the bottom, and you can see Indiana in the week before it.
Yeah.
That stretch of Northwestern, Indiana, and then Washington is going to be the most key stretch of Nebraska's season. They only play Indiana twice. And to be honest, Indiana is the best team in the Big Ten that they play right there, preseason-wise. Northwestern's good, don't get me wrong. But Indiana has the best talent pool in my mind of those three. They play them twice.
And
that 8-game stretch is going to be incredibly key. Jordy's going to pitch. I guarantee you Jordy's going to need to pitch. Of those 8 games, she's going to need to pitch 5 of them, honestly. And that's going to be down the stretch. So that stretch right there, everything before that, I mean, it's not a wash, and they're not going to win every game, but
they avoid UCLA. They avoided. Did they avoid Michigan too? Wow.
They don't play UCLA. They play UCLA and Marietta in the non-conference game. They don't play Michigan. They don't play Oregon.
Well, and that's why Justin's point is valid that Jordy may have the better individual season because her team's going to need her more. Jerry Glasgow on the podcast here on the Big said he doesn't want to use Nija a ton. Like, he wants to keep her fresh. And he does, I think, have a better pitching staff than Nebraska does behind him. I like Chloe as the number 2, Riasetto, who was the really solid pitcher at Louisiana. So I think Justin I kind of agree with Justin.
They got to play good defense.
Well, that's the big question.
They got to play good defense behind Riasetto.
Yeah. No, you're right. Both teams. All right. Big Ten. Anybody here not picking UCLA to win the Big Ten? Who's the biggest threat to UCLA?
I mean, I think I probably would pick. I think I picked Michigan too, so I guess you have to go. I'd have to go with them in that spot. But
they play each other, by the way. They play each other in the regular season. On the it'll be the 20 years since they play for the national.
20 years for Michigan beating UCLA with the national title. Yep.
I'm sure Shelley Carlin appreciates that.
We're just reporting the facts, ma'am.
Victor, do you agree on Michigan there, or you got somebody else?
I agree. Yes.
I agree on Michigan, but I got to say that Nebraska schedule is very favorable.
Very favorable.
And this is one of the things that's going to be really tricky for the committee and everybody else. This is why the committee does not go by conference standings when they decide on as far as seeding for the tournament because of the imbalanced schedules. I think and this is an example, Nebraska could end up with a better record in theory than UCLA, even though I think UCLA is the far superior team, but Nebraska may have an easier schedule in the Big Ten. That could happen. I'm not saying it will, but it could happen. All right. Big Ten pitcher of the year and player of the year. Anybody not taking Jordy Ball?
No, but I think somebody from UCLA could give her a run for her money.
Victor, you got your hand up.
Richard Nemeth from Penn State.
Oh, ooh.
No. Okay.
I am picking Jordy because I'm with you, Justin. I think she's got to. If Nebraska's going to be successful, she's got to carry them. And I think the UCLA pitchers, Tinsley and Terry, are going to cancel each other out from a pitching of the year standpoint. Because I think Kelly Inouye Perez isn't going to burn one pitcher over there. They're going to split.
That's fair.
And not to mention, you got the freshman phenom as well. I think you're going to be three-headed monster.
Take the load off the veterans.
Correct. Whereas Jordy's going to throw more. So I like, even though I think Tinsley and Terry, you can make the case right there. I think they're going to cancel each other out. I think it opens the door for Jordy. I think Michigan's ace will be in the mix. But if Jordy's healthy, if Jordy is not healthy, then that gets interesting. Could open the door for Dukowski at Michigan. Could open it up for the split for the UCLA there. Player of the year.
I like Megan Grant.
Nick?
Yep,
Go
I'm
Megan
agreeing with Justin, Megan Grant.
I'll just go different, just to give a name different. I'm going to go Erickson, Michigan, just to be different.
Okay.
It's going to be different.
If Northwestern wants to make a push in the Big Ten, they're going to need a big season for Kansas Robinson. That's my dark horse pick.
Yeah, fair.
I think Indiana's got some sleeper award some players with sleeper award chances
Copeland,
too.
right? Copeland
throwing a minute.
Copeland, yeah. I would agree with that. I would tend to agree with that. Interesting. No mentions of Oregon in any of this. It's interesting.
They could be okay, but the kicker is I think they're closer position-wise to Washington than we think because there's a lot that's unproven. The difference is Washington's what we used to call in the South a scrap iron group, where you pretty much just piece it together here and there. Yeah. Oregon at least is Oregon's unproven, but they knew who they were graduating, et cetera, et cetera. Mm-hmm. Like I think to me that's the biggest difference.
They knew who they were replacing, and they knew who was coming in to replace those parts. Washington, you're just trying to put things together and hope it works.
Yep.
All right, let's go to the ACC, which is a good time to promote the fact that on the next podcast edition of In the Circle on your favorite podcast feeds, as well as you can download on the Varsity app.
Yes.
Thank you. We'll have Lonnie Alameda on the show, FSU head coach, and Taylor White, Duke associate head coach. Let me ask you both this. Are you more intrigued this year about Florida State or Duke in the ACC? Who's got you more intrigued?
You had to use a word like intrigued with an ambiguous definition. I mean, the problem is they both do, and I think in my brain it's equally. Duke, I need to see Duke replace the pieces they lost. Like they still have Cassidy Curd. They still have some of those offensive pieces. Jess Oakland can't play this year, so she's there, but is a non-factor. They did lose some offensive pieces. Like think about it. Claire Davidson's gone. Like Claire Davidson came a little bit out of nowhere last year. Player of the year, plays pro last summer. She's gone now. Jayla Wright gone now. Lily Walker, to me, Lily Walker is going to be an underrated departure from Duke. Like they're going to feel that because she was so good in relief. That's going to be one they feel. She's at Baylor now, but technically she graduated too. So my thing with Duke is how do they replace? My thing with Florida State is similar but different. How do they roll with what they've got? Like you think about it. Their young core that they got, I mean, those two freshmen last year on the left side, Beecham and Torres, heck of a pair. You've still got an Amaya Ross. You still have Michaela Edenfield. You still have Janai Kerr, but you lose the steadiness of Kaylee Mudge. You lose the sturdiness of Devin Flaherty. So the pieces you lost were really key. And honestly, last year, Allison Royalty stepped up in a way I never really expected her to when she transferred to FSU, but she kind of had to. They add the transfers in the circle, Weidra and Apsel. Danley proved to be pretty durable herself too. But that to me, they FSU intrigues me just as much as Duke does. Duke intrigues me because how do they replace what they lost? Florida State intrigues me. Can what they picked up and what's now the freshmen that are now sophomores, can they just flat out, can they deliver? They can. I mean, I think Florida State's a World Series team and it's not close. And maybe they don't have to go through Norman, Oklahoma this time, or lose 5 games in the 6-game stretch when I'm in town. I'm not going to Tallahassee this year, by the way. I realized I'm not going to be welcome back if it happens again, so it's not going. But no, I mean, you think about that stretch where they went Alabama, Duke series, Texas, loss, win, loss. That was a heck of a stretch, and it didn't define Florida State season because they took the rest of conference, went uphill, got the seed. But that to me is the intrigue of Florida State is I need to see is what they have and what now the young players they have, can they just grow to where they need to be to get Florida State to that level. So honestly, they both intrigue me just for pretty different reasons.
All right. Who can break the party? FSU Duke is kind of the consensus pick by a lot of people to win the ACC. Give me a team that can win the ACC that's not FSU or Duke. Is it
Doesn't
Virginia
it feel
Tech?
like it's? I feel like it's Virginia Tech potentially, especially with they have to rely more on their offense. Then Florida State and Duke will have to rely on their offense. I feel more confident that they can win with pitching and their offense. Virginia Tech has to win with their offense and develop pitching on the way there. A team that I think we need to give more credence to is Virginia. We saw what they did last year. They're picked in the preseason poll number. They picked in the ACC preseason poll 5th. They got Bingham returning back. They got Jade Hilton on ACC preseason honors. Virginia, that confidence they got from breaking through last year to make the tournament, I think that can serve them well. And I think Virginia could be a team that you can see be in the top 3 of the ACC. They're in the neighborhood last year.
You buying, Justin? What do you think?
I mean, Eden Bingham's the goods for UVA. She's probably the best pitcher in the ACC. Nobody knows. They should know her after the regional performance. But to me, Virginia Tech's next on the list. They graduated talent. They've graduated a lot of talent the last 2-3 years. But they always seem to reload with the big bats. And I like where their pitching staff's at this year. That's the thing with these big home run hitting, whatever you want to call them, teams. When you have a good pitching staff there, like I think that's incredibly key. And I like Virginia Tech's pitching staff. You've got Limley, you've got Mazzarone, and you've got Sophie Kleiman, the Indiana transfer, pretty much steps into the shoes that Grind vacated when she transferred to Oregon. I like that group, and I think the ACC this year, that group can have some success. Plus, Virginia Tech's had some near misses. Like, think about it. You go back, what was it, the last couple of times they were in L.A., even the regional or the super regional at home when Florida upset them?
2022,
yeah. That was a long time ago. I had to think about it for a minute. But, like, I think Virginia Tech's had some near misses. So if they get close, like, it's not one of those things where, we're just headed for another. Like, when you get enough near misses, eventually you're not going to miss. So I think Virginia Tech's in the spot to at least have a shot to not miss again.
They finished the regular season hosting Florida State.
Mm-hmm.
So keep that in
mind.
And they start the conference schedule with Virginia in the Commonwealth Cup.
Jenna talked about Stanford and Cal, so we'll just leave it that. I don't want to be repetitive on that, unless this is actually your answer on this. And I don't think it qualifies because they both made the tournament last year. But who is this year's Virginia? In other words, the last few years, we've had a team that breaks through and makes the tournament. Virginia was that last year. A couple years ago, you had Georgia Tech be that role, Louisville. There's always that team in the middle of the pack that missed the tournament that sneaks in. Who could that be this year? We got people saying Notre Dame on the posting here.
Victor, you want to go first?
I'm gonna go with NC State with Lindsay Leftwich. She got a couple of transfers. He built something. They had a nice foundation for what they did last year. And the thing with the Wolfpack, now that they know, and again, Eric, another team you're going to see opening weekend. So I expect a full report on D1softball.com and on the podcast after that opening weekend, because you're going to see Georgia, who we talked about earlier in our live show,
I'm calling all those teams this weekend in Orlando. Yes, ESPN Plus, folks.
Yes,
Yes.
Yeah, so you and Alex Powers. And
Right.
here's the
Great
thing
Alex
with NC.
Powers.
Yeah, the great Alex. And the thing with NC State is Justin, you talked about the important stretch for Nebraska. Let me show you NC State's conference schedule towards the back end of the season, because this is going to determine things. They got Florida State and Tallahassee. They host Virginia Tech and Raleigh, host Clemson. Then they got North Carolina and Chapel Hill, and they end the season with Duke. And how about they got a sneaky 3-game series in Auburn to end the regular season? That could go a long way in determining what things look like for Lindsay Leftwich in year number 2. But again, that stretch for NC State, Florida State, they got Florida State on the road, host Virginia Tech, host Clemson, North Carolina, and Duke to end ACC play before they go to Auburn for a 3-game set versus the Malvols to end the season. That stretch will go a long way to determine where the Wolfpack are going to be come the ACC tournament, and they're going to be on the right side of the bubble or be one of the first 4 teams out.
Your thoughts, Justin? Who do you like?
It's tough for me. I like NC State. It's tough for me to pick them because of that schedule. Like I need NC State to be 500 in that schedule to really be in position to get there, and I don't know that I see them getting there. Chapel Hill for me is one that I've kind of gone back and forth on. I'm not sure Chapel Hill has all the pieces, and I'm also not sure. Like I never know what to make of what now is a Chapel Hill team. I never know what to make of it. Remember, we got a lot of transfers there. So I'm just not sure what to make of that team right now. So I'm not comfortable saying, yeah, they're going to take a next step. I mean, and the kicker too, Notre Dame might be where my brain goes, but I have questions about Notre Dame. That's a new coaching staff. Like Chris Knapp's been there. Rest of the coaching staff is new. I have significant questions about the rest of the coaching staff. The talent level is not bad. I mean, you still have an Addison Amaral and a Laudenslager, whoever else. So I like the talent level at Notre Dame, so I'm probably going to pick them, but I'm picking them with an asterisk because I think they're going to need to overachieve what they've done in past years. Like past years when they made the tournament, I think they're going to need to overachieve that this year to get back. But they're probably in the best position to be that next one. Truth be told, I'm not sure there's going to be a Virginia of this year, a Louisville of this year, a Georgia Tech of this year. I think that mid-pack of the ACC might be
Stanford of Cal, because Stanford Cal may take up those spots in theory. Yes, I don't disagree with that. I do like with Vic NC State. I'm looking forward to seeing Lindsay Leftwich in her second year in person. I like Notre Dame as well. We'll have Chris Gannett, by the way, later this week on In the Circle of D1 Softball. I like the energy out of South Bend there. Remember, prior to last year, Notre Dame made the NCAA tournament for the last 2 decades. So a little change to deal there might make the difference. Player of the year, ACC.
It's tough. I didn't expect player of the year in the ACC to be what stumped me today.
I was going to say, I mean, we got Beecham, you got the
Torres, I don't. The kicker is
McMillan.
Beecham's an easy pick, so I'm probably going to go with Beecham.
Okay.
But I think the conference with the Kegels of the world not there anymore, I think the player of the year race is a little more wide open. I'll go Beecham, and take the cheap way out. But there's probably 10 kids I could see getting it even in the preseason.
Vic,
I'm going Vega. Duke builds up that phenomenal sophomore campaign.
Pitcher of the year.
Doesn't it feel like Emma Lemley or Bingham's award to lose?
I'm almost going to go Curd because I think she's going to have to carry Duke in the circle.
That's all I was going to say, Curd. But I like Lemley too. I think
I do too.
I like
and Bingham's got an outside shot at it. Like she's good enough to be the pitcher of the year.
If she duplicates what she did last year, then she'll definitely be in the running.
I'm going to go McMillan for player of the year, ACC. Tech.
That's a good pick. That's a fair pick.
Just because I think FSU players will cancel each other. I mean, I might, who knows? I overthink this stuff sometimes. Coaches go vote much easier than I do. I like to be creative.
Right.
Who are we picking ACC champ? Who are we picking?
Florida State.
Vic?
Duke.
I'm going Florida State as well. But Duke's obviously a good pick. Again, more on FSU and Duke on Monday's edition of In the Circle of D1 Softball Podcast. Check out your favorite podcast, Spotify, Apple, iTunes. Just go to d1softball.com.
The Varsity Network.
Thank you, sir. Mid-majors here, real quick. Now, for full disclosure, me and Justin are going to do pretty much a close to 2-hour preview on the mid-majors and all the storylines. But we're going to give you a little appetizer here. Victor, I'm going to start with you as a result of this. Who is the best mid-major team going into the season? Who is your team?
The best mid. Do we consider Boston University a mid-major?
Absolutely, yes. You
So that's just how we'll go with basketball to Boston University. Because you make the argument, you got the best pitcher in the mid-majors, and when you go to d1softball.com, you will see how highly I think of this individual. Hint, hint. Justin, you know exactly what I'm talking about.
I do.
Casey Ricard is who he's referring to, the Boston pitcher, one of the better pitchers in the country, could be the best pitcher in mid-majors. If you don't have her if you don't see her on a softball rankings list, top 50, top 100, just disregard just
Unsubscribe,
throw it away. Whatever.
Throw it away.
Yeah.
Throw it away.
Justin wants to keep his pick till that preview show. So I will not press him on that. I'm going to go Liberty. I'm going Liberty. One inning away from a Supers last year, brings a good core back. Pitching's much more experience. I'm going to go Liberty. I expect them to dominate CUSA. I'm going to go Liberty. Go ahead.
Well, the one thing I will say is, A, it's not going to be just one team. I know you're all shocked. And B,
Eric, you deal with it. I'm going to take a time out. I like all these rules, man.
I like the top tier of the American. You can save the rest for the mid-major preview, but I really like the top tier of the American. I think they're the goods.
Fair. Okay, very good. All right. Again, look for that on our podcast feed later this week, probably Wednesday. We'll do a special Wednesday. It's a midweek. We're going to do a lot of mid-major coverage this year on D1 Softball. Stay tuned for that. Listen to that episode coming up there, mid-majors. All right. The moment is truth here. We've gone 2 hours. So much for my prediction, but yeah, let's just keep it to an hour. I don't know what I was thinking.
Okay, wait, you said the American as a conference?
That's what Justin liked. He liked some of the top tier. He doesn't want to give away the answer. You have to tune in. You have to tune in Wednesday.
Okay, fair. We gotta give people. Yo, Eric, who's your pick, sir? Oh yeah, you said Eric said Liberty. Eric said Liberty, one Blaro.
Liberty. There you go. See, people
can I give you a sneaky sleeper team?
Correct. Sure. Yes.
Watch out for Troy in the Sun Belt.
Whoa!
A lot of experience coming back for Eric Newell. You got a lot of talent gone from the Sun Belt. No Fandefort from Texas State. A lot of talent gone from Louisiana. New regime. Keep an eye out for Troy. You heard it here first, ladies and gentlemen. You heard it here first.
A much more wide open Sun Belt.
Yeah.
Than ever before. So that may not. I could see that actually. By the way, some of the comments, I want to address some of the comments. Yes, we did interview Patty Gass, so it's on our podcast feed, January 20th. It's an audio interview, no video. If you want it on the YouTube channel, talk to the executive producer, Victor Anderson, who's the creative as when it comes to putting audio content on the YouTube channel. I am not that creative. So if you want to request it, beg Vic. Just beg him, literally.
Look, Eric, I already owe people the clip of the fire alarm incident that I have to still pay off. I still have to do that for the people.
I'm just saying. I just had people ask there. Somebody asked a good question on the board. Who are you picking to lead the nation in home runs? Because Justin, you gave that great stat about the how much experience we lost with that home run stat. I don't know, for those that may have missed it earlier, if you want to repeat that stat again, as far as what is it? It was only 6 active.
Of the top 50 active career home run leaders last season, we only returned 6. There's only 6 back. I say we only return. There's only 6 back this year. Graduated the rest. And I actually really like that question. I mean, I think Brie Ellis is a fun pick.
Woo-hoo.
I mean, well, she's number 2 on that list. So Govan is the current active career leader. Brie Ellis is number 2. She plays at Bogle Park. I don't know if you've heard about the Bogle Bombs that are there.
I've heard it's very homer friendly over there.
There is a parking lot behind left field that I will never park in, no matter how many times I cover games at Arkansas. So, I mean, I think Brie Ellis is a solid pick. The thing is, though, I think you're talking – I think what we're going to see this year is somebody like a Carly Godwin or a Jason E. Beecham, young, still getting better, that maybe just smashes the heck out of the ball. I'm going to say Brie Ellis is my pick because I feel safe in that. But I really think we could see one of those young, budding superstars end up at the top of that list by the end of the year.
Very good. Vic?
A lot of interesting picks in the chat. I know Jello Golembuski from Miami was right up there with Carly Spade. How does she look without Spade in that lineup with Miami with Mandy Gardner Colgate? I'm intrigued to see how they look. I will go with Reese Atwood just because what she did last year in Texas. Now, will the numbers I can see her home run numbers go down, her RBIs go up. I can see that potentially happening for her. A dark horse that I think could possibly lead the nation to home runs just because she transferred over. Mac Barber from Texas A&M, transferred in from San Diego State, has a big bat. Just something to file away. Has a lot of protection, a lot of options top of her in the lineup.
Interesting. Golembitsky might be the safer pick just because of the competition in the MAC. But of course, the good question is, does she get the pitches? Does she get walked around? I'm gonna go Golembitsky just because I think of the competition. However, I like Shaylin Govan. I just wonder if she'll get enough pitches.
Yeah.
I just wonder if she'll get enough pitches. And I don't know the answer to that. I'm going to go Ella Parker. I think Loves Field's a home run park, and I think she's going to explode this year. And I think she's a stud.
So I'm gonna before we get into what I know is next or that segment, I'm gonna give you two. I'm gonna give you a chance to shine or fall on your faces in the trivia department.
Sure.
So I told you there's 6 of the top 50 home run leaders from last year coming back.
That's good. Yeah.
I'm going to tell you, Golembowski and Mac Barber are both on that list of the 6. Okay. So Govan's 1, Ellis is 2, Golembowski and Barber are both on that list. Who are the other 2?
Oh boy, Vic, you're the trivia champion here.
Oh, thanks. Thanks. Put that on my lap. Thanks. Appreciate it. So we've already named 4. Who are the other 2 in terms of active? A small part of me wants to say Sid Sanders from OU. Because you got to remember her freshman year. Because remember, her freshman year for Arizona State, she was an absolute stud.
Yep.
So thank you, Fang Nine, for the little assist there. And
I will tell you, we have briefly mentioned the other player on this list already.
Realists.
Not in this category, but on this show.
Ooh.
So it's not Brie Ellis?
No, Brie Ellis is already on the list. She's number 2. But we've already
you already mentioned Ellis. My bad.
Is it Megan Grant?
Nope. It's a senior.
Well, I would hope so.
Yeah. 1 home run fewer than Sydney Sanders.
Ooh. I'm going to be so frustrated if I don't get this one.
I want you both to know I'm really enjoying this.
Did we say Govan?
Govan's number 1. She's already on the list.
Govan's already on there. We established Govan, Barbara.
No,
Nope.
I give
Right
up.
conference.
Right conference. Oh, is it Vic's girl, Vega?
Nope.
I give up then. Vic, you give up?
Is it Peck?
Nope.
No, I already said Peck. Yeah.
No, you're right. Who is it?
Michaela Edenfield, Florida State.
Oh, Vic. Oh, Vic. Yeah, walk of shame. Walk of shame. While Vic walks in shame.
I really enjoyed that. I just want you to know how much
I know
I
you
enjoyed that.
love throwing those trivia stuff, man. It's crazy spot. Very, very well played. Well played. A couple other questions people asking about Nyjah and the NIL money. Will it be an impact on softball? Would it hurt it? Listen, for those that want to be negative about it, can we just be negative on that stiff quarterback that the U got in Carson Beck, who is all he does is throw a bunch of interceptions. So he's making like $3-4 million. So how about we go after those guys? Those people are the football players are the ones that are ruining it. Don't be blaming on soft female athletes.
Hey, don't get mad because the woman got the bag.
Yeah, exactly.
And it won't ruin softball either because it's not going to become an everyday thing in softball.
Right. It's more the exception. Football and basketball, on the other hand, it's going to be big problemo. Big problemo there. Carson Beck. What the heck are your Victor doing down? Hey, Miami, why don't you spend that money on a softball program instead of a
Thank you. Yes.
Unbelievable.
Oh, man.
All right. If you got any last-minute questions, feel free, but it's the moment of truth. We are going to
We're getting close to that time, people.
Make our OKC picks. Now, our national championship picks will be on d1softball.com this week, part of our prediction page.
Mm-hmm.
So we're not going to unveil our national title picks here. We want you to subscribe. We want you to read it. Trust me, it's well-earned. Justin's a great writer. Not as good as Rand Podke, but very good himself. Right?
That's actually true. That's actually true, though. I will absolutely accept that because that's true.
Listen, yes. I texted her as I was doing like Big 12 Media Week, and I was doing some of stuff, and I had a text her. I'm like, "Thank you for your fall reports on the SEC coaches and some of the other teams she did," because I'm like, that helped me prep for my interviews. Is much easier than normal. So thank you.
Yes, thank you.
So awesome. We got great stuff there. We got all year round on D1 softball. So we're not going to pick the national champion. Do you guys want to pick the champ series matchup and leave it open like that, or do you not even want to announce your champ series picks? It's up to you guys.
I kind of don't want to.
Victor wants. He's smiling. Look at him. He's smiling. He wants to. Fine. We will. Yes. No. Now you're nodding. Now you already said yes, Vic. So we got to do it. We got to do it.
Just when I say yes.
We're gonna pick. We'll mention who champ series, but we're gonna pick our 8 teams. Who wants to go first?
Eric, why don't you go first since you're doing on a crowing?
Well, I will, since our previous guest, Jenna Becerra, and I pretty much had the same picks for the most part.
Dane and I, write these down, please.
I got Texas. I got Florida. I got Oklahoma. I got Oklahoma State. I got UCLA. All right. I agree with those 5. I got those 5 in. I think that speaks for itself. I think Oklahoma State, talking to Kenny guys, they're loaded. Oklahoma, they'll figure it out. I'm not, I'm always going to give the benefit out to that staff. They'll figure it out. It just is what it is. Florida, I think is loaded. Texas is loaded. Texas, again, I think that experience from last year is going to benefit them, but I think Florida's talented too. So those are 5 I got. You know what year this is, boys?
Mm-hmm.
It's an odd number. It's an odd year. You know who does well in odd years and happens to make trips to Oklahoma City in odd years?
Mm-hmm.
The Knowles. Seminoles. I got Florida State back. That's what they do. They just get there in Oklahoma City. I'm going to give them the benefit of the doubt there. That is my 6th team there. All right. There's 2 teams that I disagree with, Jenna. And I'm surprised she didn't go this route because I'm going from one of the Pac-12 alums. And yes, it's going to be a Big 12 team. That's a second Big 12 team's going to be in the World Series. But it ain't going to be Texas Tech. No. We're going old school. We're going to Tucson, Arizona, baby. I like Arizona. I love Dakota Kennedy. I think she is another sleeper for Big 12 Player of the Year. I think their outfield is loaded. They actually have a healthy pitching staff. I think they're deep. Remember, with all the limited pitching they had last year, they got to the super regionals. They get Devin Netz back. I know they got to replace some infielders. I like this Caitlin Lowe Arizona team. I think it's on paper her best team there. I got Arizona going to the World Series, representing the Big 12. Is that strange as that sounds? And then my 8th and final team.
Buckle up, kids.
Just follow me, Vic. Justin, you know this too very well.
If this is going to take a while, you want me to brew another cup of coffee there?
I'm going. I heard my pick. Ooh. Pig Suey. Arkansas. World Series. Baby. Courtney Deifel breaks through as a head coach. Arkansas. I love the young freshmen. Ella McDowell's my National Freshman of the Year pick. I am going Razorbacks into the World Series as my 8th team. Woo, Pig Suey. Let's go. Let's go.
Your thoughts?
Didn't see that one coming. I don't hate it. Just the freshmen have got to produce.
That's a talented freshman class. I like them a lot.
No, it's a great freshman class.
It is a fantastic class. I've seen Ella McDowell, for those that could be a star. Like I think that kid is special, and I like the freshman pitchers that she brought in. That team is, I think it's their best team since that 22 team that was a win away from the World Series on a roster. I like the versatility. I'm with Vic. I love Kaylee Whitecoff. I think she's a perfect fit there as well. They're going to score runs in bunches, but I like their pitching depth more. I like Arkansas. And people are asking, what about Tennessee? Here's Vic knows where I'm going with Tennessee. You know what's going to happen with Tennessee. They're going to get
another SEC team in the Super Regional.
I
talked to Karen Wigley about this many occasions.
And it's almost unavoidable now with the size score. It's almost unavoidable now. I do like Tennessee. I just think, man, we got to get somebody new in there. I think Arkansas, man. And boy, if they do, then watch my prediction. They'll take over Oklahoma City. You watch. That fan base will go because they take over Oklahoma.
Sam Pittman's going to be leading the charge.
Oh, Dave Van Horn too. John Calipari will. He'll have plenty of time. John. Dave
Van Horn doesn't want to be there because he wants to have other things on his mind.
Yeah, he wants to go to Omaha later. But I'm going Arkansas. That's my bold pick. Way out there, Arkansas, Arizona, my 7th and 8th team. There you go. Okay. Justin, go ahead. Top that.
There's no chance in hell I'm topping that. Don't get me wrong. I'm not knocking Arkansas. They do have a lot of talent, and I agree with you that I think it probably is their best team since that 20.
I might be a year early.
That's exactly. Now, the kicker is you graduate the Ellises of the world after this year, but you might be a year early, but I do like the talent level on that team. So I don't think you're crazy. I just wasn't expecting it. So you kind of knocked me with that one. That doesn't happen very often. So, I mean, my picks, the same top 5, right? Texas, Florida, Oklahoma, UCLA, Oklahoma State. Like, easy. Like those are the ones that I'm like I have my pen in different colors. Those are the ones written in the black ink. So I actually also went Florida State. Didn't think about the whole odd year thing. I think they're back in shape, honestly. They went back to the portal. Let's be honest. They went back to the portal. Like last year, they had one portal kid at the end. She was backup third baseman. This year, they went back to the portal. So I got Florida State. That's my 6th team. I went Arizona too, actually.
Whoa!
Like it's funny because
bear down, baby. Bear down.
A year when you graduate the Carly Scoopins and the Allie Skaggses of the world, to pick Arizona feels really stupid. And yet at the same time, if I look at an Arizona versus a Texas A&M, who I think has a chance to get to Oklahoma City, I think I actually have more faith in Arizona. The depth of the pitching staff, I think they've got better pitchers than we give them credit for. And I like those young offensive players. Yeah, you don't have Scoopin or Skaggs, but I like Kennedy. I like Shockey. I think they've got some effective players there. And that Escobar kid who came from Oregon State is not shabby either. Like, let's not forget her. She's not shabby. So I picked Arizona. And remember, they made it a couple of years ago truth be told, I'm still not 100% sure how they did. I think this team's better, to be honest with you, across the top to bottom. But then last year, they made that super regional run, beat Arkansas, went to Stillwater. So, like, it's not like Arizona. I get the whole they skipped their tournament, or they've ended their tournament streak and all that, but it's not like Arizona's just been down and out either. Looks different, but it's not like they're down and out. And then my 8th team, I went Tennessee. I hear what you say about Tennessee, but
no, it's good. I mean, I'm not going to dispute that.
Of the three, so I consider Pickens, Canady, and Ball the three best single pitchers. Like, outside of everything else, I think those are the three best. To me, Pickens has the best backing, but I think Pickens also has the most room to fail and still be fine. Like, the other two, I think it's on their shoulders, et cetera, et cetera. I think Pickens has the runway of the three, the best runway to still be having success by that point in the postseason. So I went Tennessee with my 8th pick.
You're getting props here, Justin. Apparently, the last 2 years, you've had the most World Series picks correct.
Oh, cool.
So apparently, you know what you're talking about. No, look, I like Tennessee too. Craig Snyder's the new hitting coach there. Mm-hmm. Again, they're going to get paired up with an SEC team for whatever they're going to do. That. People are asking why.
Traditional like any other. So
neither me or Justin picked Texas Tech. By the way, me and Justin did not even speak about this, so I did not know that we both liked Arizona there. I think Texas Tech, I'll be honest with you, last year I went deep in the water in Nebraska and got burned by the injury, so I'm a little more cautious. And, even talking to the folks at Texas Tech, they got the pieces fit behind NiJaree Canady? Does the offense, will it click? I also, like I said, if they don't host, that path might take them to Norman. They might go to North. They have to go to Oklahoma in the Supers, even if they host. So I don't know. I think would it shock me if Texas Tech get to the World Series? No, because if anybody could do it, it's NiJaree Canady. Okay, yeah. So I'm not. And I think, I don't know. Would you guys say? I think there's about 15 teams that can get to Oklahoma City, 15 to 20. You can tell. And I would say, you know what? I can see a path. I could see what right, Justin, 15 to 20.
20 feels like a lot, honestly.
Well, it is,
based on what we know right now.
Would you have picked Oregon State a couple of years ago? No, nobody would have picked that.
Do not bring up Oregon State a couple of years
ago.
Arizona, by the way. Arizona got in as one of the last teams in. They made it to the World Series, for those that are questioning the Arizona pick. So I'm just saying there's always a little surprise here or there that could happen there. But we'll see. All right, Vic, you're up.
All right. So, of course, I agree with you on the Big Five. So the ones that we differ are 6, 7, and 8. And boy, it's one of those things where I'm gonna look like a complete genius or a complete idiot with these three.
What else is this? Is the history of our show? This is
that exactly.
This is what else.
How do you think we lasted going on Monday 910 episodes?
Fagna is writing all this down. The guy somehow figured out to keep track of everybody's bracketology last year, which I won, by the way, because thank you.
Shocking.
Yeah, big surprise. But so we're not going to do as well in this picks. But so what else is new? So go ahead, Vic.
Well, none of you are saying Texas Tech and making it to Oklahoma City. I will. If you have the best player in the game who's been to Oklahoma City the first 2 years she's pitched, you don't bet against her getting there. And I think Jerry Glasgow can put pieces together. Tara Archibald, his daughter, leading the pitching staff. I think that's going to be vital. I think Texas Tech not only breaks through, they make it to Oklahoma City, and the national headlines are going to be big time with Canady making it to Oklahoma City. My 7th pick, I doubted this individual last year. He made a prediction. I thought he was crazy. I had egg on my face. Nate, I'm giggling with you, sir. I got A&M going to Oklahoma City. I like
Jenna has A&M, yeah.
I like what they got coming back. They got close last year, that dramatic super regional versus Texas. Kennedy's got some help in the circle, Barber, a big transfer, a big bat added to that lineup. I think A&M makes that final push. They get to Oklahoma City for Trisha Ford. The 8th one, there's always that one team that I always feel like I'm a year early or I'm a year late. A sense of theme from last year, Eric. Teams that got close, didn't break through, and they get there. I'm going with Baylor. That's my dark horse to get to that 18 Oklahoma City. I'm going Baylor Bears. I think Shaylin Govan, her and Coleman, the transfer from Houston, that could be the best 1-2 combination, not just in the Big 12, but in all of college softball. I think Baylor, they may have to do it with their bats, but I think Baylor bashes their way to the World Series. So that's
bold. That's a bold one there. You put there. That's
Lauren said, hey, you blew it at the end.
She loved your picks until then.
Wow. I was doing well for Lauren, and then I said Baylor.
Wow.
All right, so let's show some of your picks in the chat. Let's see. Fang Nai, Texas, Florida, UCLA, Texas Tech, OU. He's got LSU going to Oklahoma City.
So I'll say this: Arkansas, LSU, even Georgia, they're all in pretty similar boats. They've got a stud here or a stud there and a lot of youth. So I kind of lump all of them together in a boat in my mind, honestly.
It's a young sport this year, a lot of graduation. I think at some point Oklahoma State was young last year. We were like, oh, I don't know how good they're going to be. And they got
and guess what they did? Well, granted, thanks to the number 1 overall pick in the AUSL draft, our girl, Mr. Lopez, this Lexi Kilfoyle doing the work for them.
Correct.
Nate Kearney, his 8th for Oklahoma City. He's going with Texas. He's going with Texas Tech, and he has Arkansas.
Interesting. A&M as well. I don't know Oklahoma there. No Oklahoma.
All you fans, y'all know what to do. Lauren, Oklahoma State, Florida, Texas, Oklahoma, Texas A&M, Texas Tech, Florida State, and Tennessee. So she has Tennessee. So Justin Lauren agrees with you in terms of Pickens in Tennessee. They'll probably have to be an SEC team in the Supers like they traditionally have to play to get there. So Callan,
I don't mind the pick.
Callan, Texas, Florida, OU, Oklahoma State, UCLA, Texas Tech, A&M, and Arkansas.
Well,
Razorback love, Justin.
I think we're seeing a theme
I love
here.
Razorbacks.
Outside of Baylor, and I'm not picking on you, Vic, just outside of that one team, our picks, Jenna's picks, even the picks in the chat, you're seeing the same teams regurgitated. It's the same 12, maybe 13 teams. And it's just what combination of them do you pick? Like I used to play a game as a kid where you had blue, yellow, green, and red pegs, and you had to put them in order. And then they would tell you if it was the right one in the right spot or like Wordle now, like Wordle.
Yeah.
And I think that's what we're seeing here is it's just, okay, what combination of the colors, what letters are you putting in? What combination of teams are you putting in the World Series? Because it's all coming. Yeah. All these teams, I mean, literally, I think it's 12, 13. I didn't count exactly, but it's the same pool. And one we haven't heard, I haven't seen even anybody in the chat say Nebraska.
Well, and that's funny, right?
Got to see if Ball's healthy. Got to see if Jordy's going to be healthy.
Oh, yeah, that's what I'm saying.
And again, as I was explaining earlier, last year I was all in on Nebraska. And then, it's nobody's fault, but she got hurt opening weekend, and the season went downhill. So I'm being more cautious with Texas Tech maybe than I, could be. Again, I like the Texas Tech pick, but I want to see how it fits. It's a little different, and I like I said, all those Louisiana players that joined Jerry, are they going to be as productive in better competition? With all due respect to the Sun Belt, they're going to play better competition in the Big 12. Maybe they will. I'm not saying they can't. I just want to see.
We'll see.
That's all.
We'll see.
But I think we got some interesting. I think so. We're all kind of thinking multi-bid Big 12s in the World Series.
Yeah, we're just having different teams. I got three Big 12 teams.
Glenn, well, I tell you, Glenn Moore should thank you. I mean, that would be wild.
Let me ask. Okay, I got one, gentlemen.
Go ahead.
A deep sleeper team to make it Oklahoma City. A team that we didn't see coming, like let's say a Utah a few years ago, or I'm not saying someone's gonna be like a James Madison with Bonnie Alexander. That I feel like we're doubting Bama again because they always seem to find a way every other year.
I don't think that's a sleeper, though.
I mean, Bama does seem to find a way. I'm going to tell you right now, Pat Murphy deserves some kind of lifetime achievement award because he has taken some of the least talented World Series teams, like least talented, and made them World Series teams. And that's not a shot at him by any means.
That's how good of a coach he is.
But that's my point, Justin. You're saying, wow, 20 might be too much. Alabama can get to Oklahoma City. They've done it. Like, they can figure it out.
To be fair, when you say 20, I think I look at teams that are good enough to get there. I don't think Alabama's good enough to get there. But if you told me Alabama got there, it wouldn't shock me because that's what Murphy does. He takes teams at whatever the talent level, the buy-in is there. He gets them to buy in. He gets them where they need to be. I mean, think about it. Last year was the worst year Bama's ever had. They weren't a good team last year. I'm just going to say it. They were not a good team last year. And look where they ended up. Where did they finish their season last year? Remind.
I believe the initials are OK and C.
Yeah, I think you're right. Like, that's the thing. That wasn't a good team. They didn't have to be a good team, and they made the World Series anyway. Like, that's just what Murphy and that's happened in other places, but that's just what Murphy does. Like, whatever he does, that's what he does.
He makes it work.
I don't think you can call Alabama a sleeper, but the same recipes there that it's always been, I feel like.
Yeah. They should be more athletic this year. We'll see. But yeah, I can't discount them. It's a fair point. That's what I'm saying. I think that's why I'm kind of liking these picks. I think what's interesting is I think we're all pretty much the consensus on the top 5. And then
which probably means one of the top 5 is not even going to make it. But yes,
that's the scary thing. I see some love for Mizzou because remember, but let's say here's the crazy thing: Mizzou was this close from not even making it to Supers last year because Omaha pushed them. Mizzou had to battle out of the losers bracket just to advance to Supers. It had to be Omaha twice on Sunday. So I agree with the love for Mizzou. But let's remember how close Larissa Anderson and company came for not making it to Super Regionals.
Justin, why are we giving A&M the benefit of the doubt? Consider there are some pitching depth questions behind Emily Canady, isn't there? And they did lose some offensive personnel at A&M, but yet it feels like we're all kind of bypassing that. Why do we like A&M so much?
I think it's a combination of I think they overperformed their talent level last year, so I think that plays in. But I think it's because of how good Emily Canady looked last year. And for me, A&M doesn't have as much youth as your Arkansas, your LSUs, or your Georgias, or whatever. I'll say this. I like the added pitching depth. I like the Sparks kid from Ole Miss. I think I said that earlier. I think she was underutilized at Ole Miss significantly. Just because I think that, and I think she's going to be good for them, doesn't mean she's going to be a World Series caliber number 2, though. The Peters kid from Washington was a pretty highly touted recruit. I don't know what you're going to get out of her, and I sure don't know what you're going to get out of her in the SEC. So, to your point, maybe we are giving A&M a little too much credit, but they're not as young as several of their conference peers. They return a good core led by Canady. And I think they overperformed last year from what they had. They had a good year. Don't get me wrong, I'm not taking away from their year. I just think they overperformed what they had a little bit, and it's to their credit that they did. So I think part of the reason we're giving them credit this year too is kind of expecting them to repeat that.
And I think the other thing, you look at their SEC schedule, the biggest series that they have, with the exception of Tennessee, they all come to Davis Diamond. Florida comes to Aggieland. Alabama goes to Aggieland. They end the season versus Tennessee, and that series is gonna be over in Knoxville. But every other big series they have in the conference is going to be played at home, so that's going to help.
Yeah, I agree with that.
That is good. That's I think we've gone the gauntlet of the SEC here.
Hey, Nate, we talked about the SEC. I think that's the reason. I think Juan Brower brings up a good point. Who replaces Cranes at Missouri? Because she was the reason she got Mizzou to the Super Regionals.
I mean, I think Harrison replaces the innings. But I don't think Harrison replaces the grit. I think Harrison could, but I don't think Harrison replaces the grit aspect right away. I think she could step in and be the ace, get a good chunk of the innings. But yeah, I don't think she's in position, at least not to start the year, to be what Krings was in total.
We shall see. We shall see.
All right. I think that's it. I think we've covered everything, at least the most of it.
No? Are you sure? Just shy of 3 hours, are you sure?
Well, Justin, you know whenever Eric says we're trying to go for an hour, you know that good and darn well that ain't happening. You know, good and darn well that ain't happening.
Well, I always it helps when you have an incredible audience that contributes. That's always a big positive.
Guys, before we go, I do have to make an announcement here. I know we talked about a lot of stuff.
Yeah, let's go here. Justin wants to go to sleep. He's been driving for 12 hours.
Dude, Justin's gonna need a 15-minute nap because you two gotta record your mid-major special anyway. So think of it as
get the Dr. Pepper ready there, Justin. Yes,
Wemblero. So
you want to know about the Patriot League, Justin? Wemblero mid-major season preview coming up. We're gonna preview the other 27 conferences. We'll talk about all the teams to watch, players to watch. We're gonna talk about players in each league. We're gonna watch that this week on In the Circle and D1 Softball. It'll be on our YouTube channel. Well, we'll say Tuesday-ish night, maybe Tuesday-ish. Wednesday. And then the podcast will be out Wednesday on that. Go ahead.
So, announcement time. All right. Okay. So, for those of you who follow our YouTube channel, I know Justin loves to press your luck music. So, for those of you who follow our show, I do like a little spin-off segment on our YouTube channel called Yeah, I Said It. And I announced back in December that it's going to be rebranded. So I'm officially proud to announce what the rebranding of that is going to look like. Folks, if y'all thought I was crazy on this live stream, y'all ain't seen anything yet. Are you ready, gentlemen?
Not really, but we're gonna have to go ahead.
I was about to say that.
Oh, thanks, Eric. So, folks, Wednesday night, 9:30. Yes, I am rebranding. Yeah, I said it to the Victor Anderson Show. There's going to be a lot of stuff going on in softball. My thoughts on opening day, the games I'm looking forward to that opening weekend. Oh, yes, the whole situation with Cleveland State, the AUSL draft. We'll be talking about all of that, a special preview of the Victor Anderson Show, live 9:30 Eastern time. Wemblero, I don't know what time that is and for you in Japan on Thursday, but it will be live exclusively on the In the Circle YouTube channel. Regular schedule to be determined. So
I'm gonna have to start calling you you're gonna be the Jason Kelsey of softball here. I mean, what are we doing?
I don't know if I have a lot of cussing. I sure don't have the budget to have
better not,
and I don't think I have a twin brother that I'm aware of that's playing in a big game. But we shall see. But yes, Victor Anderson Show, a live sneak preview Wednesday night.
D2 talk, Division 2 talk.
D2 talk. A lot of stuff about softball. I know people are asking questions about my situation with Stetson. Some of that might be addressed on Wednesday. So 9:30-ish. Right here on the YouTube channel. So hit that subscribe button. Turn on those notifications. A special live edition of the Victor Anderson Show. Exclusive on the In the Circle YouTube channel, Wednesday night, 9:30 Eastern time. I don't know what time that is going to be for you on
figure out the time zones here. Everybody can figure it out. All right. That'll do it. That's it. We're done. We're good. My goodness. This is a record. 2 hours, 45 minutes. What are we doing? What happened here? What happened? D1softball.com, right? Justin, tell the audience what they expect.
Well, we published 93 articles in the month of January. So a little bit of everything in the preseason. Now season starts. We got a little more preseason, couple more things this week. And once season starts, we'll get into our routine. I mean, it's content all the time. That's how I've taken to saying it is. It's content all the time. And I'm on the road every week this year, so that's going to be fun. It's going to be.
Ooh,
you're already you're in Orlando, making ready. He's getting ready to hit out of town there.
Justin's road travels.
My bracketology comes out this week.
Yep.
My season bracketology. That'll be out on D1softball.com. Our season predictions will be out D1softball.com this week. Justin will be in Clearwater for the NFCA Leadoff Classic, one of the most anticipated NFCA Leadoff Classic of all time. That is not a hype. They are ecstatic over there with the teams they have there, highlighted by NiJaree Canady's debut at Texas Tech, Jordy Ball's return to Nebraska, etc. I will be in Orlando for the UCF tournament. It's a pretty good field. Georgia, UCF, they have a history on opening nights, so it gets crazy. We'll see how that goes. Illinois is in there, JMU's in there, NC State's in there, Bakersfield. Encourage you to check it out, ESPN Plus. And check it out in the Circle podcast this week. We will have Lonnie Alameda on Monday, so FSU head coach Taylor White and Duke associate head coach. Justin and I's mid-major season preview show. Preview every conference, the only show that does that. We do it here. And we'll have Coach Ganef. Who knows? Maybe we'll have another surprise this week. Thanks to everybody that's tuned in, everybody, for the 2025 edition of Season Edition. For Victor Anderson, for Justin McLeod, for Jenna Becerra earlier in the show, clearly the smarter one of the group. I'm merely Eric Lopez. See you later, everybody. Let the games begin. This has been In the Circle Live Season Preview 2025. Good night. See you soon.
Top podcast is out. Good night, Japan. Good night, Canada. And, well, everyone else. Oh, good night, Alaska, too. Can't forget Alaska.